needs a pretty little girl to feed him when I'm gone. I've got a pig at home and a pin corn to feed him on. All I need's a pretty little girl to feed him when I'm gone.
I start laughing just thinking about it.
Well, all right. Welcome to the Dave and Dan Show. How do you like that? Very, very rural
What?
opener.
I think it was exciting.
Well, we're here to talk to you guys about some actually really cool stuff here. And it looks like freedom is upon us. It looks like some very important and relevant things are getting ready to happen for ourselves and for the world. In case you don't already know or figured it out from the opening title sequence, Dannion is a near-death experiencer, probably the world's leading expert on death.
I'd have to say I'm right up there with the best of them. If you deal with this nature of life, as a lot of us, David, are so afraid, we're scared to death of death, and we're being controlled by being scared to death of death. So if we use that as a basis that death doesn't really occur, then the information that we bring forth in that lighthearted way that we do it empowers people and gives them a chance to look at all the things that's going to happen during the holidays, everybody.
You just keep talking. This is live, and I
all
realize
those things that happen during the holidays become important to have a joyous slant to it, a slant of gratitude. Remember, 2 years ago, last month, I was dead. So I have nothing but gratitude, joy, and happiness to be here, to be a part of this, and to be a part of this end of the year program of the Dave and Dan Comedy Hour, LOL, and to bring this information apart to not only make you insightful, but to keep your heart open and to be thankful and have gratitude. Because, as David says, when you look at it from the points of view that we're looking at it today, the world is funny.
You funny.
But it's also mysteriously wonderful, and we're about to witness victory.
I would agree. At the same time, let's be very clear that the things that I'm going to be talking to you about are intensely terrifying. So we got that. We got intensely terrifying. How do you help people navigate intense terror? Before we get into what's intensely terrifying, how do you help them do that?
Understand its reality. And understand we put ourselves here by ignoring so much of the minor incursions in what we're doing as a people, as a nation, what drives and motivates us, what is keeping us from not paying as much attention to our spiritual self. And then there is a super agenda. The boxes of knowledge I wrote about for Saved, which came from the first near-death experience, that when this happened, I've always had this medium, David, to look at it from and to watch it. So as terrifying it is, we are there. And the terrifying part about it is how we got here and what we ignored about our identity. The more technologically advanced we became, the more we use that to avoid facing the nature of ourselves in a spiritual way. So, hey, everybody, we got ourselves here. We have to face it. We have to be knowledgeable about it. And we have to make the right choices and decisions in the course of what you do it. And remember, we must structure where we go from here.
It is all in how you structure it. Just like the opening, I burned it into the title sequence with After Effects.
Because remember, everybody, when you're around Elizabeth and David, so many things happen that are so unfolding and so amazing in the concepts of what happens that you have to find a real sense of humor when you look at this information. And among the three of us, there is a serious sense of humor.
That is true. I think that everybody can agree that what's going on. Well, yes, that's the Elizabeth cam.
Yeah.
Actually, why don't you introduce yourself now that you've gone ahead and done it? And then there's another one too. You got another one right there, yeah. You can look at it, and that's if she wants to include some commentary or whatever, we have that option now. That's part of the fun that we're having here. Getting ready for the possibility that we're all going to have to stay home and not really be going anywhere for up to 4 to 6 months. Why? Because if you haven't been paying attention to what's going on, you really should be. So let's go to the slide real quick. We only got 50 of them this time, everybody, so we got a hard out for Danny in 2.5 hours this time. This is the part 3 of our global, very acrimonious divorce.
And that nothing's really happening here.
Yeah.
Add that. There's nothing really happening here, everybody.
And if you aren't, go back to the slide real quick. If you aren't paying attention, you should be, because we could very well be on the verge of a real war. Now, why do I say that? Because according to the Alliance, and this is insider sources we have direct contact with, they are calling this a cyber Pearl Harbor. And believe it or not, if this cyber attack is not stopped, and if the current incumbent actually wins a second term by proving fraud, this is what might happen. China may actually attempt to invade the U.S. And if you don't believe me, you have to look at this, folks, because the U.S. is already making huge military maneuvers as if China was a threat. So let's just launch into this and then we'll discuss it, okay? This was on the Hal Turner radio show website. Apparently people have said, oh, he's this and that, he's the other. Okay, look, I'm not judging his character right now. I'm just reporting on intel that, from what I've heard, is essentially more or less correct. The headline says, ominous. U.S. positioning naval vessels off east and west coasts, massive troop movements in CONUS, which I guess is the central United States, the main United States. So here we go. This is the link for however long it remains online. But this is what he says. And again, this has been confirmed. These are things you can look up. You can go online, and again, nobody is talking about this except for us and a couple others. Late Saturday, December 5th, no fewer than 25 C-17 aircraft were flying in the skies over the USA at the same time. Let's just stop there for a second, okay? This is not speculation.
Agreed.
Do not think that you're going to be treated well if you go in there with your keyboard jockey ways and start lighting us up on fire. Oh, this is disinformation. No, it's not. This is provable information that you can go in to military registers, you can see the flight patterns of these aircraft, and you can confirm that this is true, and that's what was done. This has all had the due diligence involved.
And let me add one more point.
Sure.
I lived in Las Vegas for 25 years, and I have a lot of friends that work at Nellis Air Force Base. And although they can't tell you very much, I've asked several of them. They're all concurring with the massive amount of military, both the hard ground soldiers as well as equipment being moved into Nellis and dispersed from Nellis. Fact.
Okay. So back to the slide. Once again, late Saturday, December 5th, no fewer than 25 C-17 aircraft were in the skies over the U.S., carrying troops and equipment from around the nation, all going to Nellis Air Force Base. And let me just stop again real quick. Isn't it interesting that the U.S. has been pulling out of all of our foreign military positioning? And therefore, the simple movement of all that war material back to the U.S. implies that it could be then reallocated and moved elsewhere. And what we're seeing is an absolutely unprecedented, massive military buildup and movement, as you're going to see. So again, don't you think this is newsworthy? Don't you think this is worthy of a story? Why does it take a couple idiots like us with banjo music to have to tell you this?
That's the whole point of understanding the cyber war. If this cyber war is happening, and it is, and the election things that are going on and that everybody seems to realize, then we're in the middle of that cyber war now, and just what's next.
Right.
I have a different opinion of why you would move our military battle fleets into position I mean, that's just a political point of view.
Let's go into that after we define how much there is, because
I agree.
Yeah,
No,
that's
you're-
more important. Okay, so back to the slide. All over the nation, 25 C-17s, all going to Nellis Air Force Base. Also, late Saturday, it says, no fewer than 12 C-130 aircraft, which are the biggest that we have. That's the C-130 Hercules, okay? No fewer than 12 C-130 aircraft were also on the move, and also all heading into Nellis. On Sunday, locals on and around Nellis reported the base was swarming with soldiers and Marines. They also reported seeing a vast array of land fighting vehicles, coming out of cargo aircraft.
Exactly. True.
So, Danny, and this confirms, because you lived in Las Vegas for many, many years.
And I have a lot of friends in that area and business in Area 51. They're friends of mine. So, I mean, I can call them and ask them what they see.
And so they're seeing exactly what we see in these
Exactly
slides.
what you're saying is what they're saying is happening, and that they're being dispersed. Okay,
Right.
they're coming in,
positioning.
organizing, and being dispersed. No
Right,
question
okay.
about it.
But wait, there's more, everybody. So let's go on. This morning, and this was the 8th, December the 8th, okay? According to the U.S. Naval Institute, the Navy has deployed 3 aircraft carriers, plus a landing helicopter dock off the U.S. West Coast, and 2 aircraft carriers and their strike groups, plus another landing helicopter dock off the U.S. East Coast. So then, he goes into specifics now, and I'm quoting from the article with the pictures. Off the West Coast is the USS Carl Vinson in the Pacific Ocean, not at port, along the border of Oregon and Washington. And there's Portland, right? So there's the Vinson. The USS Essex, the helicopter deploying ship off the coast of San Francisco. There's, again, Silicon Valley, all that kind of stuff. Kaboom, right there. And naturally, off Los Angeles coast, which is another place we'd expect would be a big problem. And that's why we went somewhere else.
I'd hold that
But
slide.
we're not going to say where.
Hold that slide, David.
Yes.
Watch, everybody. When you hear an aircraft carrier, and then you see 2 names, strike group and battle group, okay, when you think about it's just an aircraft carrier, that's a strike group. That means it has 13 ships. An aircraft carrier strike group has 13 ships.
Wow.
A battle group has 30.
Wow.
So when you're moving strike groups, not just one little flat top,
Right.
you're moving an entire armada of weaponry. When you look at the Zoom wall and the light cruisers and the heavy cruisers, then you start looking at a lot of deployment. And you got 4,000 Marines you can put on ground anytime. And when you talk about helicopters, you're transporting equipment and men.
Right, so this is actually a picture of the strike group, and you can see, let's see how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can count 6 ships
There's
just in the
13.
picture, but you say there's a total of 13.
It's 13 in a strike group.
So that's massive. And then off the East Coast, we have the Dwight D. Eisenhower off the coast of Connecticut, and that, of course, encompasses things like New York City, that whole region, even Washington, D.C., right? They could defend that. The USS Gerald Ford off the coast of New Jersey, again, really close to
Look at the
D.C.
ships.
and New York. And look at the number of ships. Again, these are massive deployments. And we have the USS Iwo Jima off the coast of South Carolina.
Yay!
Your own favorite. So here's the USS Iwo Jima. So now here what we have is the diagram of these strike groups. So we have USS Carl Vinson, USS Essex, and Theodore Roosevelt, all there on the East Coast, on the West Coast, and then on the East Coast, Eisenhower, Gerald Ford, Iwo Jima. And then we also have, isn't that interesting? Look at all these U.S. military deployments that are coincidentally, quote unquote, right around India, which they might need to protect, and China. Because China might make a move on India anytime. They've already been doing incursions on the Indian border. This is very concerning.
They're killing each other.
Right. So let's go back to the slide again and read more of what he has to say from his own briefings. Given these new naval deployments and the very large, sudden movement of troops into Nellis Air Force, one gets the impression that the United States is preparing to defend its homeland from actual invasion. Hint, that may actually be the case. Word in intelligence circles says that if the SC voids any or all of the November 3rd E due to the massive F and violations of the USC with changes to E laws and the lawless extension of V for weeks in violation of 3 USC 1 and 2, the Dems are planning on asking the UN to invade, to depose you-know-who as a dictator. Let's just pause on this for a second. Read this and soak this in, folks. That is absolutely freaking insane.
Exactly. And
that a foreign power is going to invade our country when the particular case that we're looking at here, we're not even going to use the F word, the amount of dishonesty that we have seen is so freaking massive. At this point, I'm really sorry, but if you don't stand up for the proper electoral process in this country, then we're never going to have anything again except for a multimedia corporate conglomerate run country where your vote doesn't matter at all. You have no rights. You have no freedom. They've already figured out how to stop us from talking about just about anything online. Okay, so, and then a server that apparently is in a foreign country, and you know which one starts with a G, right, has been seized. And we got confirmation on this intel as well. The server was seized, and here's the part that you don't know, folks, okay? Or maybe you do if you really,
and we went really hard looking for that information to verify it.
We did.
That did happen. We busted our cans to make sure when you said it, you were telling the truth.
That's right. So here's the deal. The server is going to reveal that this one agency, of which I'm sure you know which one it is, starts with a C, ends with an A, and you gotta, you can probably figure that out. Apparently, they have been using this server in this location, which is a headquarters for them in this country. They've been using this to do this all over the planet. This is not just happening here. The whole darn thing is rigged. And if that doesn't scare you, then what the heck could? And now what we're hearing is that the DS, as you've heard me use that term before, DS, deep, you know what the second word is, right? The DS has apparently made a full treaty with China. And this is how they've worked for thousands of years, folks. No country is off limits. You think that you're fighting against an enemy, and they actually own and control both sides. So if they start losing control of one side, they're going to invest in the other side. So even though you say it's China, it's actually something much deeper and more sinister.
And much bigger.
Much bigger.
Because remember, what I wanted to say, when you start talking about putting battle fleets and battle groups and strike forces, I believe that what's happened is defending against enemies both foreign and domestic.
Absolutely.
You know, like somebody asked me the other day, they said, well, what in the world do you think the Chinese would have invested in Georgia? So I went to looking around, and based on that Georgia has the Savannah seaport, you look at what comes in and out of that seaport from China into Georgia, $196 billion
right.
is at stake. Do you think that you cannot be gotten to when you are running a state and there's $196 billion at stake? Come on, everybody. Listen to what David is saying from a point of view that we have to realize that if our vote doesn't count, and what we're seeing is not all the point that I look at that my vote is in jeopardy of that it counts, which I believe I went into the military for, I served and defended. But it also means that what David does is he gives us a step back from it, a deeper view from it of these forces that are seeking to control and dominate us more than some BS political party or some political crap that Americans have been doing ever since we created this republic. So I didn't mean to interrupt, David, but this is both foreign and domestic. We must be prepared that if they're inside the gate, we must put a force outside our country to show, yes, we're going through this as Americans, and yes, it's really happening, and yes, it's terrifying. But if you think this is the best time for you to come and invade America based on something the United Nations thinks or anybody else thinks, I, as a typical Marine, say, well, okay, come on and get you some.
Come get you some.
Amen.
Hoorah!
Hoorah, step right on up. People forget. I know we're spiritual beings, everybody. And I saw all this 45 years ago, and so I have a means to look at it from. But when you sit down and you listen on this Saturday afternoon, as we look at the years ending and a new year is coming, we have to have certain things in our thoughts that we're consciously and unconsciously and subconsciously defending as a value of who we are as Americans, human beings, but most importantly, spiritual beings who seek freedom.
I agree. So what we're looking at here is very, very disturbing. If the UN actually were to invade this country, with China being the main tip of the spear, to try to overturn the will of what is confirmed to be 74 million people. So even if, and again, David's a T-er, right? Fill in the blanks between T and the ER. Oh, David's a T-er. David's a T-er. I'm not, folks. No. I'm just trying to be rational about the fact that if we don't protect the vote and the voice of the people, then what do we have? Now we're nothing but a third world country, and we are completely going to be dominated and controlled by corporate interests. In other words, whoever has that technology to be able to do what they want with it. And you look at what's already happening now, you look at the absolute destruction of the economy that has taken place over something illusion. That, yeah, I mean, we're not even able to talk about it, okay, but you know what's going on, okay? You've seen how, regardless of the origin of the problem that began this year, regardless of whether it was created or whether it just arrived, it doesn't even matter anymore.
End results.
It's the response.
The end results.
And it's the fact that the non-lethality was known at the very beginning, that it's 99%, you know what. I showed this in videos at the very beginning. None of this stuff of everybody having to stay home was necessary. Yes, vulnerable populations should have isolated. But now, why can't you go to a restaurant in Los Angeles or New York? I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. And then why are there these double standards between one type of business and another type of business? And so people are really scared, Danny, and they don't know what to do. They're freaking out. And they are being, I believe, that they are being manipulated through fear.
No, there's no question. The fear of death drives everything. Okay? When you're afraid of dying, or you have something that's constituted what you have to do to keep from dying, or to keep you from killing your children who get over it, or killing your parents. Okay? These are things that become very important, everybody, in being afraid. I am not afraid of death, and I already had this legendary deadly illness, and I have more crap wrong with me than ought to be humanly conceived of. And it took me 5 days. And you look at people who are in the public now who have had this illness and who have come through it.
And if you don't have comorbidities, then nobody does.
I have 1,000 of them. So when you start to look at this, everybody, what David is bringing forward is, you know what? We have to be thankful for that we're smart enough to see that we're being played. And we have to be thankful enough to put our thoughts and our minds and our consciousness into defending what is the core nature of our country. And it's that our voice matters and that we make the decisions about where this country goes, not some foreign country. And the other thing that you were talking about that it could have been interfered with, after the 2018 election, the people who saw the fraud, like you said, how long it's been going on, and we know it's been going on since 2020. I mean, since 2000. then you look at the company that 88% of America uses is from Canada.
That's right.
It's a Canadian company that headquarters its equipment and servers in Spain, and it's run by Serbian programmers. And when they saw that after the 2018 election, there became what we now know as the Executive Order of 2008 about
2018
yep. About defending us against this. So everything that we would need to know if it was foreign or could be manipulated, it's out there. And like you said, no one's allowed to talk about the truth so we can make the right decisions.
Oh, yeah. Well, the 2018 Executive O allows for there to be the designation of anyone participating in this type of interference as an enemy combatant, which was something the DS created for their own purposes.
Agreed.
But one of the things that we have heard from Mike Adams over Natural News is that there have been an enormous number of flights going up in the air, military flights, airborne military flights, during which time, according to his intel, which we've independently confirmed, people are being interrogated. And they are confessing. And so this is as serious as a heart attack, or more serious than a heart attack, really.
It's like 1821. It's like the election of 1821. I mean, we historically as Americans, David, you know, we're a rowdy bunch.
Yeah.
We come from everywhere. We have so diverse. We have a culture that's integrated and segregated in certain points, but we are a rowdy bunch. And we look at our politics and our religion and our rights. We look at these as inalienable, that they belong to us.
Right.
And now something is threatening them, both externally and internally. And what you are giving is a baseline for people to be able to take a good look at this. Because if you're going to stay terrified about it, you're going to stay terrified about what people are saying and doing or not allowing you to hear, then this is the end result. We will be defeated.
And a lot of other commentators have pointed this out, but isn't it interesting that the media, as far back as maybe even April, was saying, oh yeah, there's going to be a disputed election, the results are going to get drawn out, and we are not going to allow anyone to claim a premature victory.
Both.
How did they know that far in advance something as seemingly random as an election of a nation of over 330 million people?
And think about in our last show, when we were talking and I said, political-wise, David, it is impossible to sit in your basement in Delaware running for the presidency of the United States and not to be out there among the people, out there talking,
That's right.
out there interacting. Look what the president did. He had rallies with 20, 30, 40,000 people. He did 5 a day. This is what you do. Clinton created this drive and narrative and using television after Kennedy began it, but he drove it every single day. There is no way any American pollster or politician could possibly conceive of how unless something was afoot.
Well, you've all seen, I'm sure, the videos and the evidence. And it shouldn't even be in dispute. I think that even people who hate the incumbent should be aware, without any question whatsoever, that cheating was being used. Now, the question is, if you are so anti that you're like relieved, I don't care how they do it, I just want him out. Somebody I know actually said that. I don't care how they do it, I just want him out. I'm not going to say who it is, and it's nobody that's immediately here, or who I'm married to, by the way, just so that we're absolutely clear, okay? But somebody I know did say that. I don't care how you do it, just get him out of the White House. That's not... Look, if you have been PTSD'd by 4 years of relentless mainstream media abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, even really physical abuse now with the lockdowns and all the stuff that's going on. This is a dysfunctional marriage that is breaking up. It's a huge, nasty, acrimonious divorce that's affecting everyone in the world. And the real divorce, in my view, is with the DS. and the fact that they have reigned supreme with unmitigated power and control over our nation and the whole planet.
Yeah, and also who controls them, David.
That's right.
You know, remember, we try to make it down to Democrats, then we try to make it down to the DS. But when you start to look at the kind of information you're bringing forward, there is a bigger control mechanism at work that we as individuals are making a difference to make an impact on. But it's a bigger control of us, enslaving us. And if someone said, there's a lot of habits of every politician I like or don't like, and there's a lot of things that I don't get into a personality event with a person that's supposed to be making the rules. I just see the results. But I look at the point from this, that when you get down to thinking it from that point of view, you get caught up in pettiness. And when you look at what we're standing up for is our identity, our sense of freedom, and the sense that we control our destiny as opposed to those who block the information and have to come to, like you said, us with our sense of humor to get the kind of information to see that that's what's going on.
If you don't like the incumbent, what happens in 4 years when there's somebody that you do like and you want him to go in there or her to go in there? And it's completely impossible because this entity has no concern about what choice you make when you go to the polling station. It only cares about who is going to serve big money, big tech, big power, big corporate, big military, big media.
And they've proven they don't care about your life.
That's right.
Remember this morning we were looking at the lady, this morning we were looking at videos to make sure that the information that we're trying to bring forward, we back it up and we can make sure that the stuff and the inferences that we make are really true, so you can base what your decisions on.
Because it's all in how you structure it.
It has to be structured, okay? So I'm structuring something for you. They had a lady going to testify in fraud. And she had
you showed me this, and I didn't. Oh.
She had to be really powerful going to testify in fraud.
In the country that's MI, as you know, which one?
And I'm not going to get into all that. But you can find it if you look for it, everybody. And so,
well, as she's leaving her house, this person pulls up in a pickup and
no, the person was sitting across the street,
right,
backed into the space, not pulled into the space, but backed into the space, that when she backed out of her driveway to go to her testimony, the truck pulls out, blocks her, and starts firing.
And he gets out of the car.
And starts firing shots point blank into her car. She speeds away. The truck spins around, comes back after her. She comes back up on her own grass, runs in the house. The pickup truck comes behind her. The guy gets out of the pickup truck, but he couldn't get a clear shot and he pulls away. And she was on her way to testify. So are we at war? And yes, is this some really scary stuff you're hearing? Yeah.
Well, what about if DOD forces, the 305th wing of the Army Intelligence,
Kraken,
gets involved in a firefight with a certain agency in a certain country? This is by definition a war. This is by definition a civil war, because you got opposing factions within one country that are actually duking it out militarily.
Well, let me give you a perfect example of this.
Okay.
In Afghanistan and then in Iraq, you have private armies. I mean, the DIA, the C, whatever all those names are, each of them have their own private armies. Well, in Syria, they were each supporting different groups, different of the tribes, which
right,
is you give them a gun, they're a tribe, then you can name them ISIS, Adasha, whatever you want to name them. Okay? So the D and the C's secret army fighting force had a rivalry in their villages. So the one 3-letter agency and another 3 letters got into a firefight with each other and was killing each other in Syria over that. So when we talk about this is happening with the arrogance, the control, the systematic cyber war of our intelligence agencies on the ground. So when you stand up and she's going to testify and you try to hope it's not some story, but this is what she's going to do, and a guy's trying to assassinate her, yeah, there might be something else going on. But it's pretty obvious that when it's happening, that they have to stop her.
Right. And now we have the SC, Supreme You-Know-What, saying, oh, no, we're not interested. We don't want to take the case.
Chickens.
So we have a source that I speak to. We call him the General. I want to make sure that you understand this is not Flynn. It is a NATO person, but that's all I'm authorized to say. But he is very centrally involved. And we speak under a very secure method. Now, I know that a lot of you, especially if you're not at all interested in the current incumbent, and you are terrified of him and his administration, the General made it very clear to me that this buildup that we've just described to you, that's on the East Coast, it's on the West Coast, it's around China, it's around India, this is not going to be used, and I repeat, this came directly from the General this morning, folks, it is not going to be used except in defense. Let's be very clear on that. Now, defense, however, could take a variety of different forms.
Yeah, that's what we talking about.
We have to be precise about this. But look, when we're dealing with a situation that's this crazy, this horrifying, this insane, that such massive corruption has been revealed, that this is actually happening. This is our lives. This is happening now. This is freaking real. You can look up the massive number of flights of people that have been getting interrogations in the air, and then also all this military movement and the alliance briefings that we're getting is that there are many, many different positions in which soldiers are being stationed, usually, by the way, in plain clothes, oftentimes with missions they've already trained for before.
No question.
All as part of this defensive response, because we've run out of time. There's no time left to wonder about this. The Alliance has made it clear that this was a cyber Pearl Harbor. They cannot allow this country to be stolen and hijacked, because if you think that anything that you've seen up until now is bad, you have no idea how aggressively the DS is preparing to move, how aggressively quickly your life could change in the most unpleasant and horrible ways. You're never going to be leaving the house again. You're going to be on a fixed income for the rest of your life. These are absolute realities. Okay?
And multiple vaccinations.
That's right.
Multiple vaccinations.
Don't
not
say the
one,
V word, though. Let's just
multiple
V's. Yes.
I agree. I'm sorry. I apologize, everybody. I didn't mean to tell the truth. I will try not to tell the truth.
Try not to tell the truth.
But you know, when you look at this, and you sit and we talk back and forth like we go, and the greatest part about David is we can be talking about it, and he'll be on the computer looking at its history and finding it. And the fact that Elizabeth is almost as bad as he is. And then I have dueling researchers on some obscure fact that I heard somewhere. You'd be amazed at how much fun it gets around here. But when we get down to listening to the fact that there are agencies within our own government that have sold us out, and there are representatives, and there are places and congressmen and senators and that have sold out, and we start to hear it now. You cannot hide so much of this information. But remember this, everybody. Remember this. If they saw the 2016 election and by the watch the midterm to make sure that they would write, and then the President administration signed the 2018 executive order, and if you read it, instead of just listening to the two of us, or the three of us, if you read it, you will see they had anticipated the cyber war. And they would have designated the enemies, and they would have qualified what they were going to do and season all of their assets. And I believe that that was the integrity part, warning them of what the cost of what they were going to do in 220 would come down to. And I think that that knowledge, and me talking to people that I know, is the reason why we're seeing the fortification, and we have ground troops in multiple places ready, knowing what and how they're doing.
All right, let's go back to the slide because I want to develop this a little bit more. So, you saw this already. If the SC voids any or all of the E, which that's the first bullet point, and that's just happened. However, again, the general said there are several more things they're going to try legally before any other type of defensive response. So this is not over, folks. It's not like the only one.
But to keep showing everybody who is who.
Right.
The more that this happens, the more that if I'm an enemy, if I'm looking for an enemy, which I'm not, I'm looking at the politics of this. The politics of it is to expose the flank of the enemy, to show their betrayal, to let them keep walking down this path. If we own the server, David, if we captured that server in the stuff that you both looked up and found it to be reinforced
what the briefings
by
told us.
At least 3, but we found 3 other positions that reinforced it.
Yep.
And that really happened, and we're in possession of that server. That means that this has gone on for 2 years.
That's right.
And we're watching it being executed. But what the thing that you heard the other day from these people of yours, and I didn't hear about this morning, but what you heard the other day was they're trying everything they can do to expose the corruption so more people see it.
Right. That's the really important point.
And the more people that see it, then the better they understand the actions that's being taken to preserve and protect this country and its inalienable rights. And I don't give a damn who it is. Whoever's standing up to defend this position for us as Americans, I don't care who it is. I am thankful for that person.
Well, you have to be able to think clearly enough to look outside of the immediate PTSD of the moment where the media has been giving you one goal only. They've been feeding you one goal only. Get rid of him, get him out of the White House. For 4 frickin' years. That's the only news there is. There's no other news. There's nothing else to talk about. First it's an impeachment, then it's this, it's Mueller. It just goes on and on. It's never stopped. Okay, and he deserves better than that. Mm-hmm. He's really actually accomplished a lot of things. The incredible work that this man has done in breaking down the human trafficking networks alone
Absolutely.
is staggering, and it's been almost completely unreported on. The economic gains that we had prior to this thing happening are tangible, and that benefits everyone, okay? So now, for so many years, we've been talking about mass arrests, and all these people write stuff online saying, oh, David is full of it, David doesn't know what he's talking about, David's only interested in making money. Believe me, that's not true. We're here because we want this message to get out. It would be a lot easier for me never to talk about this stuff, protect the channel, and just lay low. But this needs to be discussed.
Or to move into other opportunities that's been afforded to you.
Absolutely.
I sit around and listen to the deals and what the opportunities come, but you hold true, David. Listen, you hold true to getting information out and brilliantly researched and reinforced.
It's all in how you structure it.
Now you're learning. Finally, I'm making something out of you.
I heard it straight from the horse's mouth.
That's right. Honey
all right,
boy.
Let's go back to the slides real quick because there's some other things I want to install here. So they're actually planning on asking the UN to invade. I mean, this is so insane. And where in the world do they think that they're going to get the support for this? So let me just go to the camera real quick again. All right. How isn't it amazing if you have any... If you probably most of my audience, by the way, and I always work for those who are the swingers, right? If you're a swinger, if you're not really sure, if you don't really understand this, and we spoke to a very intelligent person recently who totally doesn't get it. Totally doesn't get it.
Never, hope he burns in hell.
Right.
A brilliant mind.
Let's not say too much about who it is.
Well, I don't care.
But anyway, we have certainly spoken with people ourselves who are very, very anti. But it's really a question of what decisions did people make, what choices were made in the polling booth, and the defeat was absolutely staggering. The down ballot situation, right? The losses across the slate, across the spectrum, and then we're expected to believe this ponderous nonsense. And if you actually, I mean, here's another thing, folks. If you haven't been studying all of the information on the corruption in the latest E. I mean, Dannion, between you and I and my wife, we do not have time to keep up with how much actual physical, provable legal data there is to study. It's so much information.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Just looking at the testimony before the legislatures in Pennsylvania, in
don't say state names.
In those states that are up for declaring who their electors are. When you look at the testimony and you listen to the testimony, it is unbelievable. The video, the 1,000 people who were poll watchers. Wait a minute. I know there's fraud. I grew up in the South, everybody. I understand how dead people vote. I'm from South Carolina, and I understand.
And if somebody orders train cars full of potatoes and sugar, they're probably not planting the potatoes and eating the sugar.
Guaranteed. So, and you have to remember, there are networks. And what's happened to that network, it has grown into where billionaires take enough money to buy whatever you think is honor and to betray the system. And we are witnessing that. And if you think we're not witnessing that on a scale that is so global and so cybernetic, that you're making a mistake. And like you said, David, it is overwhelming from a political viewpoint, me, who lives in politics, lives in it, to see how everybody should be on this bandwagon. I don't care what side you're on.
Well, and I think it's really cool. This is going to be a joke. Let's go.
Go ahead.
That's fun.
Have some fun.
I think it's really cool that that the word Gaylord suddenly has taken on this whole new connotation, right? I was transporting 2 Gaylords from one state to another. Well, yeah, that sounds like a certain type of business. Maybe not the business of postal mail. A Gaylord apparently is a really big box, and when I was watching, I think his name is Jesse's testimony about transporting 2 Gaylords, I'm like, transporting Gaylords across state lines, this is...
But David...
It's got Saturday Night Live written all over it.
But David, just another real American.
I know.
You see him on the TV for the first time, and he's nervous, he's terrified, but he is going to defend what he saw loaded on his truck. And what he saw in doing this for 20 or 10 years, he saw in a series of events that he had never witnessed before.
2 massive boxes that happen to be called Gaylords,
and
that are loaded to the hilt with T ballots.
That came from...
And then he drives them over...
From another state.
Is told to park him in this weird place. He's not allowed to be paid for it. He's all angry. He goes back the next morning and his truck is gone.
But watch what you just said.
Right.
He went to the supervisor and wanted his trip sheet because he had to 6 hours till they figured out what to do with those votes. And when you match what he's saying, to the time frame of when everybody quit counting ballots, that 6 hours was the time frame between when the overwhelming majority of votes...
Don't say V's, say V's and B's.
Okay,
V's and
the
B's.
overwhelming majority of... And
B's.
And, okay,
yeah.
And B's, that the... How would you say it? That the calculation that they had made to determine who would win was so overwhelmed that they had to hold those votes to see where to put them based on that.
That's right. And it's a good day for Gaylords. If you can transport 2 Gaylords and get national attention, it's a happy thing. Let's just be honest about this, folks. I mean, Gaylords are cool. It's going to be there, But if the Gaylords aren't opened up and used, then that's really, really bad. If you move them somewhere and then it's all weird and suspicious and you park your vehicle, your truck, you go back the next day, it's gone, and there's no explanation, those were not counted.
And there's
were
also
not counted.
no normal paper history.
Oh, I know.
No one would give him what he's been getting for 7 or 8 years, and he was only being a guy doing his job. And he only happened to make sure they loaded those Gaylords in a way that the stability of his trailer, which he pulled every day, that the stability of it. I was a truck driver, so the distribution of the weight inside of your trailer is important, or he would have never seen that they were bees. Okay, so when you look at how it comes about, I have more confidence in that American blue-collar working guy
Absolutely.
than I have some congressman or some fool sitting behind a desk trying to tell me that there was not fraud.
And if you look at the data, the wonderful, wonderful data from Project V, from James O.K., and you probably know what I'm talking about.
Well, if you don't, look him up.
Veritas, okay. If you look at that, here we have a whistleblower who came forward and literally was threatened. And we have audio of the threat. We have audio of the thing happening to him. And he was forced to sign a confession, which he went on video saying, they forced me to do this. This is not true. I know what I saw. So Dannion, I think the scope of how many different things were done electronically, everywhere, the sheer number of different things that were done, the number of people involved, we've never seen anything like this in history. It's so massive.
I'm agreeing. Just the drop-off boxes, the mail-in drop-off boxes, who paid for that? Okay, what I would do, just being political and Southern, who paid for the drop-off boxes and who paid for who picked it up? Was it U.S. Postal Service? Who was that? Okay, then what could you use that box for other than drop-offs? Well, in some states you could pay your electric bill. Okay, you could do other things. All right, so who paid for this? Everything shows potential exposure.
So when somebody makes an affidavit, okay, I think we can use that word. When somebody makes an affidavit, I think maybe let's just call it an A.
Wait a minute, we're going to use affidavit. I'm sorry.
All right.
That means that you are putting your word, your solemn word on the line, even though there are consequences for your word.
That's right.
But that's still your solemn word.
You are swearing under oath that you are telling the truth under penalty of perjury, which includes imprisonment. And now, based on sources that you can see that are directly close to the incumbent, there's over 1,000 of these affidavits that have been filed. There's 1,000 different people who have all become heroes, who have all decided to step forward, tell the truth, do the right thing, and many of them don't even like POTUS. But they're doing it because they like America.
Everyday Americans, and they're getting shot at for doing it.
It's unbelievable. And now we have this kind of news that if this plan doesn't work, they literally want to stage a military invasion, and apparently the assets are already in position and there's already skirmishes taking place. Look at this. Let's go back to the slide now.
But would be the smartest time to do it.
So, this is, again, from the same website as before. There is also word within intel circles that the states of C, O, and W plus NY might actually try to S from the Union if T gets 4 more years and may need to be forcibly brought back under U.S. control, the same way renegade southern states were handled back in the 1860s Civil War. So this is where people start to get really freaked out, right? Let's be honest, Dannion, and just, instead of us being all gung-ho about this, okay, some people are going to really, really dislike this. If these states want to leave, they should be able to. That's going to be the argument, okay? It's not that simple. It's not that simple, because what we're dealing with is foreign interference in a USE. Foreign interference. We're dealing with corrupt powers, and we want to know what the hell is on that server, because if they're doing this all over the world, secession is not the answer, folks. That doesn't solve anything.
Agreed.
There's criminality that is vast. The scope of criminality is so vast that simply dividing the country into 2 halves So that one half, oh yeah, we're going to overlook all that stuff. We don't, 1,000 affidavit, whatever, not a big deal. That's not true. This is not being done from within the country. This is an outside force trying to divide this country, to weaken the country, because there's strong economic basis in these states that are under discussion. So any type of movement to do that is an extension of the fraud. It is a coup. It is a takeover. It is the knowing and willful destruction of what we've had for however many 270 plus years. Okay?
But David, it is an attempt.
It is an attempt.
It's not a takeover because we're still here. Okay, and I believe that how they've languaged this about the 1860s, it's like you said, there is that Civil War concept of renegade states, that mindset is gone.
Right.
I mean, we are Americans. We'll work it out some kind of way.
This is a country. This is our country.
Yeah, we'll work it out. But what you just said, this is intervention from foreign powers to disrupt and to fuel this kind of stuff and to keep us frightened wearing masks and to show that the country is collapsing when that is another control mechanism in place. But this is an attempt, everybody. It's not that we are being fanatically one-sided. But if you don't put in your mind that this is an attempted coup, not by forces, like David said, multinational forces, to take control over America's right to determine their own manifest destiny, and we're not going to have it.
Not to mention that in the original 1862 precedent that they're referring to here, the president at the time, Lincoln, actually declared the Insur You-Know-What Act, okay? And that was necessary at the time in order to preserve what we still have today. And that included a preliminary mass arrest scenario that's
habeas
similar,
corpus.
Much smaller than what we're looking at now.
Had to suspend habeas corpus, too.
That's right. The military was used domestically.
Lock them up.
And people who were spreading disinformation, propaganda, lies, they were actually arrested, and that includes very prominent media companies and personalities.
100%. There wasn't much media. It was just the newspaper printers. But this is not new to us, everybody. Please get this in your mind. It's just more advanced and more sophisticated, and it's at a wave that has been so subtly put on us by our ability to have instant communication between ourselves and have social media connections and construction, which the creation of them is in question. But to be able to, in real time, live and function, that puts us into where we can be controlled and manipulated, and then what we're allowed to know becomes important. We must take back control of our ability to have free press and the right to have free speech.
Well,
and that's at stake.
And I also want to point out again that this is a war against everyone. I wrote a book. You can go on my website, divinecosmos.com. I wrote it last summer of last year. So well over a year ago now, a year and a half ago. And it's called D-Class. So go to my website, you can see that. And I was talking about the censorship that already was drastically affecting people like myself and others in my field. And in case you still think, oh, this is cool because my side is cheating so that I don't have to deal with this a-hole anymore in the White House. Thank God we're going to get rid of him. No more 4 more years. We're done. We're free. Finally. I don't even care who it is. It's got to be somebody else. It can't be him. Don't fall for this. This is the oldest trick in the book. And if you think that the current incumbent is unacceptable, it's the old trick of 2 unacceptable choices. But if you have the other unacceptable choice and there's this much fraud involved, how could it possibly be good for anything?
Agreed.
If you don't like the guy who's in there now, you only have to wait 4 more years if this turns out in his favor. Okay? You only have to wait 4 more years. And I want to know what the heck is in those sealed indictments. I want to, or probably shouldn't even said that. But,
yeah, I wouldn't either. Or H's laptop.
That's right. That's
okay?
right.
Who ever heard about that during the election cycle? Who ever heard about it?
Nobody.
The Russians did it. Look at what the congressman, the head of the intelligence committee, it's Russian interference. Okay, so there's no talking about it. Who in the hell buys that? How in the world, David, can we buy that? I try to keep myself spiritually focused until you take away my ability to speak and my ability to be able to participate in helping make this country as great a country as I can. And if we're not doing that from a petty place, we're getting tricked into falling for it. And I'm so glad that we're doing this show today, and how hard we went back and forth to make sure the stuff you're saying is right. That's right. That people understand that this is not over, and we have to stay focused on our rights as Americans.
So one of the things that I really wanted to point out, and I've spoken about this with Elizabeth on many, many occasions now, is this idea that everybody's business has been destroyed. Everybody is out of work. It's actually quite genius. If you look at it from a diabolical perspective, if you look at the scope of diabolical genius, the level of intelligence, what has happened? You have knocked everybody's business off.
The little people.
You've dumped them all online, so now they are forced to sink or swim and make a business online. And now that everybody's online, you have complete control over what they get to say. Anything that you don't want them to talk about is removed. So if you go back to D-Class, which I wrote last year, I document in there how all of these organic food discussion forums have been deleted with millions and millions of followers. Anything, and I documented this last year, last summer of 2019, anybody who had an anti-V, as in an injectable, an anti-V group, they were all being deleted. Why organic food? Why would they want to get rid of knowledge that's going to help you eat healthy and make healthy choices for your family?
There we go.
This is crazy.
And look at homeopathy. Look at what they're attacking. Look at
now. Homeopathy is under attack.
Right now, and it's a 10,000-year-old history. Okay, so when you start to look at all of this and to look at the control of what's going on, it's easy to understand that this is really happening, and it's affecting every single one of us. We can't just let it become the stupid politics of a president because you just wait 4 years. But you look at what this incoming potential president is saying, what he's going to do, and what we learned about it's like recreating the last 8 years.
It's all the same people. It's the swamp
doing
all
the
over
exact
again.
Same thing.
If you are far left, if you are far L, let's just say it that way, you have been betrayed. You didn't get anybody that you wanted. You didn't get any of the policies that you wanted. You didn't. They used you. They lied to you. They dangled out a woman to try to make you feel better about it. And yet her policies are extremely alarming and highly communist, and it would be very destructive. There's the amount of nonviolent cannabis lockups that she created on her own caused a massive, massive decline in the black vote.
And she was a pot smoker.
She herself did it, yes.
Openly, and laughed. And I have a problem about...
It's police state tactics.
And putting people to death and knowing... My problem with her is this, the abortion issue, and putting people to death when she knew they were innocent. And she didn't release the information under a FOIA until after they had been executed. Right there, I have to stop for a moment and really assess, who am I dealing with?
That's right. And it's extremely troubling. It's so troubling. And of course now, I might just have to get a disease. I mean, we've already talked about this too. Pelosi's already set this up. The plan is, as soon as they get what they want, they kick him out. They're now talking about the laptop in the media because they're getting ready to knock him down.
Right, and he said it.
Yep.
He said,
I might need to get a disease
and step down. So he honestly already knows what the game is. It's
so
how can
crazy.
people not see it?
So crazy.
How can you not see it? But you know what? You look at the people who are on both sides. From you narrow it down to politics, on both sides, we're Americans, and we have that point of view. But it cannot be so influenced by outside forces that we literally hate each other, or we hate the color of our own skin.
That's what really needs to stop. It's this internecine fighting. This
Pettiness.
group, this occult group that has been doing this for hundreds of years and has really been dominating the U.S. for 80 years. That's what you're going to learn about as this goes on. It's going to be an 80-year time window that the alliance is going to focus on. I don't want to say too much, but they're estimating it's going to take people 5 years to learn what was really going on. The learning curve of how much there is to know. You and I know this.
Absolutely.
We're out here digesting this information for you, packaging it so that you don't have to do all this homework because it is so difficult just to learn everything.
And it's pretty frightening as I sit and watch my two brilliant researchers, David and Beth, as you watch the flow of information come before you, and it's assimilated before you, and you're looking at it to see how brilliantly they have done it. And how, if you say over 80 years, how brilliantly they have done it, and how subtly they have incorporated these systems, the educational system, grants to colleges and universities,
right,
funding they are the source of pharmaceuticals.
Well, let me give you a little hint about the 80 years. It's 1940, and it starts with the OSS. And you can take it from there.
Know that game. And Operation Paperclip.
You got it. The 80-year figure is going to become very important, folks. And you can think about it and extrapolate from there.
Let's go to the next slide.
Absolutely. So what's happening now is that, this just happened, folks. The day after that article came out that I just read to you saying that we are being threatened and that all these assets are already in place, we have this news report that says Wisconsin-based F-16 crashes in MI. Isn't that an interesting place and an interesting time for allegedly routine training, right? Like a fighter pilot can't figure out how to drive a training flight. Give me a break.
And where is it? But where is the plane based out of?
So let me just read this to you, folks. Sorry it didn't animate it. I didn't have enough time. There's so much going on. A Wisconsin-based fighter jet crashed in a national forest in MI's Upper Peninsula, the upper part, right where everything was happening. While on a training mission, and searches were looking Wednesday for the pilot, who was the only person aboard. They have not found the pilot. This is very important. The F-16 Fighting Falcon, assigned to the WI Air National Guard's 115th Fighter Wing at Truax Field Air National Guard Base in Madison, crashed at about 8 p.m. on Tuesday, according to the WI Department of Military Affairs. The cause of the crash, as well as the status of the pilot, were not immediately known, the statement said. The plane went down in Hiawatha National Forest, about 250 miles northeast of the base. Captain Leslie Westmont, a spokeswoman for the 115th, said she had no new information late Wednesday afternoon.
How close was it to the Canadian border?
Exactly. How close? It is literally right on the border. That part of Michigan, the top part, is that little part on the top of the state, right below Canada, right around the Great Lakes. And at least what Turner is getting, Hal, on his intel, which we have not actually been able to confirm this with our own sources. I want to be very clear on this. Right now, this is rumor. This is speculation. Don't hold me to it if it turns out to be a legitimate crash. But the timing is extremely suspect. And for what it's worth, Hal's insiders said that it was actually shot down. Now,
and we tried very, very hard, David, to read everything that everybody is seeing, everything that you're seeing, everybody. We tried very, very hard to make sure we had good information from everywhere that we could look.
That's right. Now, here's where the story gets even crazier, folks. And again, we only have 50 slides, but the intel itself is drastic, okay? The pilot apparently was captured. In this intel, what we're hearing, he was captured by China. So they have a hostage, and that's very, very bad. That's very, very bad for the soldier. It's very bad for our country. It's very bad for the prospect of where this could go.
And it's arrogance.
It's being reported as a routine crash, but look at the location, look at the context, look at the deployments. Massive, massive fleets of ships on both coasts, an unbelievable amount of positioning going on inside the U.S. that we know nothing about, and I don't want to know the information. I don't want that intel. I don't want to know where they are, how many there are, what they're going to do, where they're going to do. I don't want to know. It's better that I don't know.
And make sure no pickup trucks are parked. No, look both ways when you get in your car for a brown Chevrolet pickup truck.
So what was the response? What was the response? The response apparently was a massive strike. And this came in from later briefings from the same source. And here is a link of somebody writing about that. It was on his show. Hal himself hasn't written about it yet, but he did do a broadcast on it. And again, right now this is only intel. But if you go and dig into this story, which again I didn't have time to put it all into slides and read it all out for you, but I'll give you the gist of what's happening, okay? There was a very unusual, strange earthquake in Maine. And it was below the surface of the ground, but it has one of these type of spikes where it's all the energy happens, boom, all at once. And then it decays. Normal earthquakes start rumbling like this, and then they just get crazy. And then they kind of rumble back down, right? It's this kind of like, it goes up and down. But when you get an underground NU explosion, boom, you get this all, boom, it all happens at once. The graph just goes straight up, and then it decays. So we have a suspicious earthquake in Maine. Now, what is the intel there? The intel, and this is what Hal was saying, and I haven't had time to do this, but this is where you guys can come in and do some more work for us.
Get involved.
We're all part of a team here. I want you guys involved. So if you go back to Hal's show, what does he say? He says if you go type in the coordinates of where this earthquake occurred, that you will see it is in the middle of no F-where in Maine, because Maine is huge, and there's hardly anybody there. So there's lots and lots and lots of land. Suspiciously, the area above the ground, right where the earthquake occurred, is a 4-acre area that has all been clear-cut by somebody that has these dirt roads in it, and there are these circular areas that suggest sewage treatment plants. Well, apparently, the above-ground area is not really the focus. This is an underground base.
A dome.
DUMB, D-U-M-B, deep underground military base.
Sure. And that one strike, what you just described, when you are listening to an explosion, you're talking about a Moab.
That's right.
The mother of all bombs.
Well, that's what they said, is that they actually shot a bunker buster in there.
Okay.
So but we're jumping ahead a little bit.
Well, that's just me listening to you.
Yeah. So if you actually follow this storyline, you follow the intel, here's what they say is happened, okay? That it was China, that they had cleared out the area above the ground. And again, we don't have any confirmation on this. This is purely speculative. We're only reporting on possible things. We're not saying this is true. This is just what one source is giving us for intel. But it's very important, worth discussing. Apparently, there was a base of 50,000 personnel, 50,000 soldiers underground in Maine, ready to swoop down from the top. And obviously, one of the things that everybody's been speculating on is, do they have some method to knock out the grid? And if we didn't have a power grid, and if we didn't have everything with the lights on, how much easier would it be if you have 50,000 troops to start doing that? It would be much, much, much easier.
And you have us fighting over a presidential election and fraud, and our identity as Americans is at stake. Who we are as the nation of the city on the light city on the hill is at stake. And you know what, David? When you look at it, we have building those domes forever.
Oh, it's so
okay.
easy.
So it could be a combination of the DS, and not just the Chinese, but a combination thereof.
Right. The DS has given all of their technology to China, and that includes these deep underground tunnel boring machines, which this is not even a speculation. You can go look it up. The TBMs are tunnel boring machines. I mean, some of them are like 100 feet wide, and they'll just melt through the ground.
That's what Tesla's doing.
Yeah.
Tesla's doing it in Vegas now. He's drilling a tunnel all the way down the strip.
Wow.
For a ferry or a subway or something but that's exactly what he's doing. So it isn't. You don't have to go very far to know that this is really true. It's happening in Las Vegas. It's like Nellis.
So I'm not trying to claim I told you so points very much, but I've been talking about mass arrests. I've been getting briefings on this from high-level military insiders since 2009. Now, the stuff that happened at the beginning of the year and the results of that, you would have never believed me if I told you something like that might happen. Just like you might never believe me that somebody could invade America. Oh, it's impossible, it's impossible, it's impossible. Do you think anything is impossible at this point? Do you think anything?
Come on. It's wide open. A new world is being born, just like the prophecies of the dawn of a new age. We're there. And I always have the boxes of knowledge to go back and to look to see so much of what you're saying. I have seen it already in the visions when I was on the other side.
Well, so this attack against the 50,000 soldiers was a defensive maneuver in response to the downing of the F-16. This was the counter move because they knew where they were, and they dropped this on them in the middle of nowhere. And again, this is still to be confirmed, and I'm sure that whatever entry wounds of this attack have already probably been, covered over. So it's not like this is going to be obvious, at least not right now. And we don't even know if this is true.
What's 50,000 guys to a daisy cutter?
Nothing.
When you look at a Moab and a daisy cutter, I can understand you having a little earthquake.
Absolutely. So in the midst of all this, something really remarkable has happened. We're an hour and a half in. I want to get to this before too much more time goes by. And that is the prophecies that I began receiving in 1996 that are the subject of my new book, which I don't think it's around me anymore. There's been so much stuff going on. I got moved, but that's okay. So my book, Awakening in the Dream, does talk about everything that's going on right now. All of the prophecies, all of the things that are going on right now, more or less were in there. Let's not worry about it. It's not a big deal. You guys know what the book looks like. And
it's on Amazon. It's number 39,000.
I don't make any money if you buy it anyway, so I'm not really that worried about it. I just want you to read it. Anyway.
Well, on Amazon, David, it's pretty high up.
Oh, yeah.
People are buying this book and reading this book, and I see some of the things that people are writing back and saying.
I've never had such a 5-star rated book before, where it's actually almost exactly 5 stars across the board. The percentage is so high that it doesn't even go below 5, I don't think. Maybe it's almost at 4.5 now, but like...
It's 4.5 and it's number 39,420.
So, and the number of reviews alone are absolutely incredible. The number of positive reviews and what people say about it. And pretty much everybody's saying this is David's best book. That's the predominant sentiment that's out there. So I want to be very clear that the book was finished in the beginning of January before all this stuff happened. And if you go back on this channel and you watch previous videos, all of those readings I was receiving, this is a telepathic thing where I'm in deep meditation and I begin speaking and the words are coming through with as little conscious mind interference as possible. In other words, it is a sacred technique of invoking the highest positive light and love possible. Invoking the Creator, invoking positivity, invoking the benevolent forces of the universe, however you choose to define them. And leveling yourself up to this very high state of consciousness while also in a very deep state of meditation, light as a feather, stiff as a board. You are very conscious, but you couldn't really open your eyes or move your body if you wanted to. That's the state you have to get into. And then in that state, if you can get your body to talk and you say the things that are coming through in your mind without analyzing it. This is what the remote viewing protocols from the 1990s and earlier taught us. I learned about them in the 1990s. No analysis, no emotional impressions, you shouldn't even be trying to understand it. In fact, if you have no idea whether what you said is garbage or real information, that's the best it can be. You don't want to track the words. You don't want to follow the information. So you actually want to get somewhat bored. You stay in this very high state of consciousness. You're very uplifted. You're very deep in meditation. Your body can't move, but you're just speaking the words as they come through. And again, this takes a lot of training. Unfortunately, many people just start doing this and then they say, oh, I'm in touch with the Ashtar Command. I'm in touch with the Galactic Council. I got Jesus on this side. I got Buddha on this side. I'm getting conference called in. Pagers are ringing. You know, Moses is calling me. Viracocha is calling me. I got everybody on my phone. You know, okay, look.
Just buy the book, everybody.
You and I both know, and we've been on way too many panels together over the years, the circus show that is channeling. The absolute circus show of it, okay? However, it is an indisputable fact that I had multiple dreams that were talking about 9/11 before it happened. There's no question. On the day of 9/11, before the day even ended, I'd already published my first article on my website showing you all these different dreams about planes hitting buildings, about all these very, very specific things. And then I went back later and found that I had readings where the words themselves had predicted the fall of the buildings. And this is in 2 different books that I wrote. It's in Synchronicity Key, and now it's also in Awakening in the Dream. And in 1999, on my website, you can go to Awakening in the Dream, look it up in the book. There's a link there. So if you get the ebook, this is one of the really cool things I didn't know, is that now you can get the ebook and the audio will read with the ebook. So you can get the voiceover, which is me talking. I read my own books. Everybody loves that, while you're reading it in the ebook. So you can actually have it going both ways at the same time. You can click on the links in the ebook. They're all clickable. And it will take you to archive.org, where you will see that this prophecy was on my website in 1999, well before the 2000 election crisis. So I published it, and that's indisputable. It's still up there now. I didn't quite have time to look it up here. But now what has happened that's so amazing, this prophecy, by the way, as I said, is in 2 different books. It's in Synchronicity Key and it's in Awakening in the Dream, and it only ever seemed to be a very accurate prophecy of the 2000 election. So in 1999, I get this cryptic phrase, doesn't seem to make any sense. It's thoroughly discussed in the new book. But I didn't even realize until the election crisis happened, oh my God, I had a reading that talked about this. So let's talk about it in terms of the original storyline. So here is the slide. This is the actual text. And remember, it first applied to 2000. Now you have to look at the context and see, okay, this was in 1999. The word this, we don't know what this is yet. This becomes the election crisis of 2000, which, as you know, it was disputed. It went to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, Gore lost. Who was Gore? He was the vice president of the United States under Clinton. So the vice president of Clinton was running against George W. And looking at the slide again, in case we're not there, considers this. So the vice president who's running for office, right, the following year after this came in, the vice president considers this election his own authorship, meaning he's the author of it. He's determining how this thing is going to go. He's looking at the numbers. He's saying, I can win this. We can get it in the Supreme Court. I can get this done. The vice president considers this his own authorship. So just to jog your memory, here's Gore in his younger years. The vice president considers this crisis his own authorship, meaning he's going to control, he's going to say we need to go to the Supreme Court, da-da-da-da-da, while not realizing that he is completely naked, meaning the vice president is going to lose. Okay? He's completely naked. There's nothing he can do. The other side, Bush's side in this case, had totally rigged it in their favor. And then it says, the interim period decides the next victor. Well, what happens in an E? An E has a victor. It has a winner. That's what victor means. It means winner. Okay? And the interim period, that's a period between 2 things. And there was an extended delay between the election and when the Supreme Court handed
37 days.
That's right, handed it to Bush. So the
and also
interim period.
But remember this, David. Every time you say that name of a president, when you look back at the history of that president, okay, you see it links directly to the DS. There's
Right.
no
Oh,
escape
absolutely.
from that heritage and that history of that dynasty that goes all the way back to literally Nazi Germany.
And in our previous video, we talked about how the entire 2000 election was designed based on this pattern from 1876, that they'd actually released the Gore Vidal book 1876 in advance in February. I showed you that. And I showed you how on Halloween, days before the election, that this insider Sherman Skolnick actually said it appears that the election is going to be there's going to be a constitutional crisis, and that the vote will be uncertain. And then he later clarified that it's because they designed it based on this 1876 thing where Samuel Tilden lost the election. Well, that's what you would do if you had complete control over how they're tabulated and where it ends up going with the machines.
And now today it's an algorithm.
It's
not
much
about
more complex.
it's not about punching and putting in ballots or stamping them or counting them. It's not about it. It's algorithms. Look at the advancement of what we're looking at 2000, which is the same game that's being played in 2020. It's the same game. Gore was winning.
Well,
He was winning by X amount
That's
of
right.
votes. So if you take this, like if you take Florida, I don't care. You will know what's going to happen. Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, you know what's going to happen.
and the Bush side muscled them out in a secret war. But again, as we discussed in the previous show, the one thing that everybody agrees upon unquestioningly is secrecy. So even if these two factions of the cabal are fighting each other to the death, which would be the British banking faction, the European aristocracy faction, which was the Gore side, the Clinton side, and they want to control the world through high finance. They want to get rid of the oil business. Then the Bush side is the oil business, right? So
Petrodollar.
what was Gore's movie? An Inconvenient Truth. What was
Climate
the subject
change.
of the movie? Oh my God, the world is being destroyed from climate change. What was the response to that? Ultimately, it was this carbon cap thing. This was a plan. I was hearing about this years ago, that the DS wanted to deindustrialize the world. They want to stop everybody from driving, stop everybody from leaving their house, stop all the factories, stop all the machines. It sounds kind of good, except that, wait a minute, if you guys are holding on to the technology where this could be done cleanly with free energy that doesn't pollute, and everybody can have a life where they get to live like a millionaire, and you're holding that back, that's insanity.
Control.
They don't like us. They don't like us. They want to kill us.
Or they don't like so many of us.
They don't like so many. Yeah.
According to
Yeah.
a BG, they just don't like so many of us. They need X amount of us because here comes robotics. What happens when a robot can cook a hamburger better than you? What happens? So you have to, and this is me being funny, but you have to eliminate X amount of us.
What other ingredients would the robot put in the hamburger? That's what I want to know.
Well, looks like you said, if you take away all of the, healthy cooking and all of the things that give people a way to take better care of themselves, then the food stuff that we're eating is already presetting what's going to happen to us, so they can develop drugs to feed us.
Why had they already massively attacked all the organic food and healthy eating discussion forums? There was over 40 of them, and they all had like millions. A lot of them had millions of people.
And the
Just
law
wiped them out.
and the laws against how you have to put on the food, what's in it.
Right, and this is all. These are groups that are discussing the benefits of eating organic, the benefits of taking vitamins, the benefits of taking natural supplements. What can you get with hawthorn berry? What can you get with juniper? What can you get with ginseng? What can you get with, just kill it all. Get rid of all of those discussion groups. That's what they did last year.
And now they're attacking homeopathy
That's right.
relentlessly.
So getting back to this, because I don't want to lose this, and we're starting to get short on time. We still have some slides to do. Getting back to the slide now, I discovered that this same election prophecy actually also fits the 2020 election, and it's so funny. But I was lying down in what we call the love room with my wife, and this is a long story, okay? And if you want to interject something, you can.
Well,
But we were.
It's mostly because that's where we pet our dog and
That's where.
dinner.
It's where we pet our dog, yes. And And
stretch.
I was sitting there,
Stretch.
and it dawned on me that the prophecy of the 2000 election, the vice president considers this his own authorship. The vice president doesn't necessarily have to be Gore. It could also be Joe B., right? The vice president considers this election, or whatever, I'm not going to say that word very much. The vice president considers this his own authorship, while not realizing that he is completely naked. The interim period will decide the next victor. Okay, so now I start thinking, because what happened with this pestilence that showed up early this year, okay? You saw that all of the readings that I was quoting from in my book, right in the same readings, they start talking about the blight and the sickness, and that there's going to be this like a plague, and that people are going to be wearing gloves and masks, and that you're going to be stuck at home. And if you go back and watch those videos, and I'd like to redo this or maybe do it in a book at some point, but there's a tremendous amount of very, very accurate prophecies showing what was going on. And if you remember, at the last page of my book, Awakening in the Dream, if you have a copy of it and you turn to the last page, I have a diagnosis of the prophecies in the book where I actually show that there were these three words that were used: scoff, have, rid. And then in scoff you have CO, in have you have V, and in rid you have ID, COVID. Okay? And if you think that's not real, David's just reaching, it looks pretty amazingly relevant when you consider that all of the other readings around that time that I went through in those videos accurately describe exactly what we're going through now. In other words, it's really hard for people to accept this, but the beings that both Dannion and I have had access to in different ways, you had to frickin' die to do it.
Well,
four times.
They have to get my attention, and now they miss me.
Now they miss you.
So they have to kill me and bring me back over because they miss me.
But we are now in a situation where that prophecy was encoded. It's in my book. You can read the book, and now you watch the video and you get all the rest of the information. It really looks like that's what was done.
But David, it's also showing, it's an overlay of showing it's the same game.
Now, hold on. I got to get this out. So what I want to show here, folks, is that when I went back to this prophecy for right now, and I looked at it now, both of these words for these two men are encoded into that prophecy with exactly the same methodology that they used in the other one regarding the pestilence. So let's look at this first. Now, it's a very strange choice of words, right? Interim period. That's a very technical kind of esoteric languaging. It's not a common way of using language. Let's take all of these words now that are in yellow, all of these letters, and make them capitalized and cram it all together. And this is what we get. Now, let's highlight a certain part of interim period. And now let's take away the rest of the letters. And then let's just take away the vowels. This is astonishing, especially because when we look at the context of the prophecy, we're going to see how this works. But again, this is exactly how the letters of the other thing were encoded that's on the last page of my book. It happened again. It's in the right order, and most of the letters, all the letters except the vowels are there. The only thing we're missing is a U. Okay, so let's go back to the slide again. So I want to walk you through this one more time just so you can see it, okay? The interim period decides the next victor. And then you put it all together, you highlight that part, you get rid of the other letters, you get rid of the vowels, and there you go. Now, look at this. The vice president considers. Okay, now check this out, okay? These two words side by side are all the letters of the contender, except for the B. And you can see this right here. IDEN in president, and IDE in considers, and then you can actually grab the N by getting the N in considers. So you've got IDEN twice. And then, I mean, maybe this is a little bit of a reach, but this is how these higher beings work. They're very holographic in the way they think. If you turn the P of president upside down, it becomes a B, and then you get this in code, okay? So now let's take that information, the fact that this happened twice, okay? IDEN happens twice. The vice president considers this his own authorship. Okay, so there's a definite possibility that that last name is encoded in there. And then authorship is also a very strange word, because once again, let's take the letters, let's put them all in capitals, and then we take certain letters out, which again, they're in the right order, and then the only other one that's not in order is the U on the left. So when you cram them all together without putting them in the right sequence, you get it this way. If you change the position of the U, you get this. So now we have TERIMP, which becomes TRMP, and you get TRUP in another word. So then it says that this guy, who remember IDEN is encoded twice, not realizing that he is completely naked. Now think about this, folks. Let's go to this one here. Not realizing that he is completely naked is one of a variety of ways to explain what Gore was involved with and his situation. But it makes even more sense in light of if by he we also say his offspring, completely naked. Think about it. Think about what that's actually saying. It's the laptop. It's the fact that the laptop, you're seeing this person completely naked. Okay, that's a big, big part of what's going on. It's actually in the prophecy. Right after IDEN shows up twice. So that's another part of it. It makes more sense in 2020 than it did in 2000, completely naked.
Right.
So then the interim period, when I look up the words interim, what we see here, one of the things, number 2, definition number 2, a temporary or provisional arrangement, and then down under adjective, it again says temporary and provisional. What has this whole particular E been about? In E's in the United States, a provisional B, called an affidavit B in New York, is used to record a vote when there are questions about a given voter's eligibility that must be resolved before the V can count. So the actual word interim, okay, refers more to the term provisional.
Yeah.
And the provisional ballot issue is far more significant in this election than it was in the other one.
It's where the fraud has occurred, not a tab, but and look how many different states that applies today as opposed to 2000 when it was just 2 little counties.
So here's the thing, okay? If we have the names of both people involved with almost all the letters of their name except for the P in president turned upside down to get a B, okay, yeah. But IDEN twice in words back to back, TRMP or some variant thereof twice in the words, interim period, TERIMP, TRMP, and then we also have authorship, AUTHORSHIP, TRP, and then the U at the beginning. I was so astonished when this came through. And as I've broken it down and seen how the word reflections go, because again, you can't dispute that this showed up in 1999. It's online, it's in the book already, and I was like, darn it, my book never nailed this 2020 election thing. And then I went back and said, no, I guess actually it did. But Dannion, I think it's difficult for a lot of people to understand that time travel is just a basic reality in the spiritual world. It's not even a big deal.
And basically most physicists already state that it's, as a theory, it's possible.
That's right.
There's no one arguing the fact of timelines. There's no one arguing it.
So I think it's difficult for people whose inclination is skeptical. They get very, very angry when you have accurate prophecies. They attack your character, not the information. or they make up silly excuses. Oh, David has no evidence. None of this has been proven. This has all been disputed. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was interviewing Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, and he had a website called skepticalaboutskeptics.org, I believe, in which they infiltrated a skeptics gathering. And these are the bane of our existence, both of us, right? Mm-hmm. And in the skeptics gathering, what Rupert Sheldrake and his people saw is that they were training the people that go after us. All you have to do, and they said this with slides on the stage, and everybody's there learning this. All you have to do is say, this has been disputed, it's fake news, it's not true. Never explain why, and be very, very confident. And that was how they're educating people to be skeptics. You don't ever actually say why it's not disputed or why it's been falsified. You just simply say, this is nonsense, it's not true. And that's the way everybody is about prophecy. But I really think...
Look at Andy Wakefield. Look at Andy Wakefield about these. Look at what happens. You completely destroy a scientist who's just doing scientific observations about the construction of a certain vaccine.
That's right.
And you destroy them, so
or
that's
a V.
easy.
We're not going to say that word
Right,
again.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
We're trying to stay online here. We're really trying, because most of this stuff is all done with algorithms and it's automated. Maybe I'm becoming important enough that they'd actually listen and just take it down out of spite. But honestly, I think they got big problems right now. And I don't think they could even begin to play this whack-a-mole game of stopping everybody from talking about this.
Because
because
the president will not sign the National Defense Act without them removing 230, which protects them, that makes them publishers opposed to, and then 48 states have sued them, plus the FCC have sued those manipulators. So they are positioning in multiple ways the enforcement of the 2018 EO.
Okay, so let's talk about insurrection, and let's talk about where this might be going before we get to the final section, because we got a little over a half an hour to go here. And we're going to make it this time.
I'll let you run over just a little, David.
Oh, okay.
Because,
well, that's...
I just want to keep it. Everybody's time is important, and everybody has to take this information and think it heartfelt, wise, and smart, because it could get crazier than hell, or it could be managed very, very well. And this is the things that we have to look at, because Tuesday is the day they declare the electorate.
Right. So there's so many things that are going on behind the scenes, and I want to just develop what we already have here, because remember, the military movement is not in dispute. It is not disputable. You can go online, you can research that these objects are in play. They are being moved to Nellis. They are being stationed out in the waters. This is not fake. Okay, so I don't want you to be afraid. This is very important. If you are on the edge of your seat, terrified that things are about to turn into WW3, well, it already started. It's a cyber Pearl Harbor, folks. It's not.
Since 2016,
that F-16 might have been taken down, and we know from good sources, attorneys and so forth, and prominent people have said that there was a raid and that this server was grabbed, and that as a result there was a firefight, and that the deaths were covered up as accidental deaths.
True.
So what we're heading into is most likely, let's just say this first. The Alliance is going to try very, very hard to do a non-military solution. If we don't get invaded, and if this can be done legally, and if the public can learn the truth in a legitimate way, this may be avoided. However, there are enormous dangers of attacks that are unanticipated. Now, I personally believe that those attacks will not carry through, but the Alliance is deeply concerned about highly destructive, highly massive attacks. We don't need to get into too much detail about what they are or how they would happen, but there's very significant concern about that happening on a multiplicity of fronts. Now, getting back to the book that I wrote, the books that I've written that I was just referring to, the whole darn thing is already laid out for you. The fact that I was getting readings in 1999 saying the military-industrial complex was going to be essentially overthrown, that there would be this restoration of the truth, which includes disclosure, that we will have UFO truth coming out. We will learn that we are not alone in the universe. And the most shocking betrayal of all is the sheer magnitude of the infrastructure that has been built out underground and off planet with the help of various ET groups, many of which are highly benevolent and really do want our best interests in mind. And so, even though the Alliance cannot bank on this, and I understand that because they have to work within their constraints, I do not believe that our guardian, positive, benevolent, angelic ETs would ever allow any of these massively destructive things to actually play out. I do not believe that it would be permitted, because what we've learned from astronauts like Edgar Mitchell and many others is that many of these UFOs have been seen over installations where these ordnances are being stored, and you know what I'm talking about, that could ruin the whole world when they get launched, okay? They power down the whole installation, and the weapons are rendered inert and radioactively inert, okay? So this has happened not once, not twice, but dozens and dozens of times with visible UFO sightings for every nation on the planet. Now, a conventional military attitude would be, oh, this is a threat, this is hostile, this is dangerous. I'd ask you to think differently. I'd ask you to try to think about the idea that there are actually good guy ETs out there that have vastly, vastly greater technology and capability than any of us do here on Earth, and they use it periodically to stop things like this from happening, and that's why it hasn't happened already. That's why we haven't had any other types of massively destructive events already. And therefore, I have been given so many dreams, of which the accuracy of my dreams is not disputed. There's plenty of accurate prophecies that my books describe, and other sites, my own website, other things that I've documented these prophecies before. It's nothing new. I had a whole article called Bouncing Back from Hack Attack that I wrote at one point, which actually had dreams in it that totally predicted Fukushima before it happened. No question whatsoever.
Yeah, I know the Fukushima story.
Yep.
I wrote about it. One thing that, quickly, I
Sure.
never saw 9/11 in the boxes of knowledge.
Right.
I never saw it. What's
Don't
happening?
say it, just say the 9 incident.
Okay, that incident.
Yeah.
I never saw it. And what's happening now, I've already seen this.
Right.
Okay, that's why I have such confidence in what we're talking about in people getting this information. I've already seen this. I've always said that battle for the souls of humankind would be fought over health care. We have a V that is controlling our economic pattern, our health care, and now a possible injection that reconstructs our DNA. And I think that becomes very, very important when we look at how our health care is being determined in the course of all these other things that are occurring. So I think that that's important.
Well, you got to keep talking because
I can do it. I have no problems because watch. If we're looking at our health care, and we're looking at that it is what's determining so much of what we're controlling or how we're controlling our world, then I need to keep that in people's thoughts. Mm-hmm. And how do you take better care of yourself when they're taking down every possible site? They're taking down every way to take care of ourselves. They're attacking homeopathy, which I think is becoming so important in what we're doing.
And what were the two groups that Stalin locked up in the camps? It was religious fundamentalists and scientists.
Mm-hmm.
And so scientists thought, oh, well, we have, there's no corruption, there's no conspiracy. Well, now, as a scientist, if you talk about the wrong stuff, guess what? Now you're in the ghetto with Dannion and me.
Yeah,
and you got to come on the Dave and Dan show because they're not going to bring you on NBC.
Yeah, and think of this. There was a video about when BG talked about a vaccine that reduced the fundamentalist evangelicals.
Oh, that's Bill. Okay, I got it now. BG.
Okay, BG's.
Yeah, Bill. Okay,
and he was teaching the CIA, the C's and the FBs or whatever it is.
We got it.
He was teaching them how by injecting this enzyme, it neutralized their intensity in their fundamental religious point of view And if you
I
put
remember
it
seeing
in
that, yeah.
terrorist, it reduces their radical place.
Okay, but wait a minute. First of all, you said the T word. Second of all, I did watch that, and it looks like it was fake. It's somebody impersonating his voice, and the video of the guy talking is actually not BG. So I hate to burst your bubble on that one, but in real time, we cannot allow people to debunk us.
No, thank you. But
yeah. So there's so much disinformation out there. We always have to be careful. And I did see that one, and it was disproven. So that can happen sometimes.
no,
But
I'm just saying.
I absolutely believe that they do want to do that, and that they have done that research, even though that particular thing was allegedly a hoax. Absolutely.
I have no doubt that they're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, this is the agenda. And so, and now just look at the list of criteria of the things that apparently you can't talk about or your whole channel is going to be destroyed. Honestly, I don't even care anymore because I'm going to get it back in 2 months anyway, according to the briefings I'm getting. So I'm done worrying about it. I'm done. Look, this is so insane. What cost is my channel if it's our freedom and it's the future of this country and the future of the planet and living safely without being destroyed here?
I'm sitting right here with you.
Right.
Based
so
on just that.
Now is not the time, folks, to be afraid and
No.
to be quiet and, oh, they're going to kill me off on the internet. Well, yes, they killed off your businesses out there, and now they've dumped you into a cyber arena, and now they're trying to kill you off in the cyber arena. But look.
And they're killing you all physically.
We don't know how this is going to play out. We don't know if the military will ever engage at all. It may not. That may not be necessary. The whole thing could happen through strictly legal process with U.S. Marshals doing arrests because everybody wants it done and it doesn't involve anything other than that. Okay, that could happen. There's lots of different ways this could happen. Nobody knows anything. So if anybody tells you they know what's going on right now, they don't. There's even plans, possibility, that they have talked about the possibility of actually allowing this thing to happen, JB, to actually get inaugurated and not to actually deal with it until after that takes place. That's been looked at. It doesn't mean they're going to do it, but they've looked at it. They're looking at everything, okay? But all of this stuff I've been telling you about for so long with the mass arrests, folks, if you don't get it, if you don't get what I'm saying, if you can't see, if your eyes are blinded by fear and by PTSD, you can't see the troops, you can't see the ships on our shores, you can't see the massive movements of planes, tanks, land vehicles, weaponry,
Soldiers.
troops. And they're being positioned in all different places that we know nothing about. And they're getting ready to do certain jobs that you can probably surmise what those jobs are, okay? Now is the time to make sure that you've got basic stuff. We do not profit off of your fear. We do not sell you survival supplies at
No.
all. There's no money coming in from me telling you this, but please, if you haven't already done it, get your rice, get your beans, get as many 5-gallon jugs of stored water as you can, get your toilet paper, get your Kleenex tissues, get your feminine hygiene. If you haven't already done it, please go to the store and get that.
Or look at survival food packets for a month or two. I mean, you can buy the kits. You're just so right because, David, I heard a conversation among friends of mine about if he is elected and if JB's put in office, then to be able to expose all of them, like you said, the
Right.
de-essers, if you put him in office, that makes no matter what you do, him the target of the media, and you can only repress it so much, and it might be just what was necessary. And I heard this from a pretty reliable DC source, that would expose so much faster and you have impeachment, the diabolical nature, and they said it depended on holding the Senate in Georgia.
Well, and it's very obvious the DS plan, because now it's in the MSM, is let's take this guy, let's knock him off for the reasons that are already out there with the laptop, with the other things, tax fraud, right? And then you got Obama's third term. It's just that it's proxied. It's proxied through Harris. Okay,
and that's the truth.
That's what they're trying to do, folks. That's all this has ever been about. It's the third term, okay? And that's not a good idea. That's not anything that we want because our country's been sold out. There are deals. These people do not think the way that you would think, and they have a whole different set of values and a whole different set of goals and a whole different set of operating principles that would be horrifying. if you knew what was really going on. And I think we're going to find out. So the DS plan appears to be, oh, yeah, that was all JB. Let's get rid of him. And now you got the woman president you always wanted. And let's just, none of that other stuff matters. If we didn't really do anything bad, the election was all fair and legit, and we just got to get rid of this one guy. That's not true. The fraud is so massive, inescapable, and systemic that it's not like if you take out the lead guy that the backup band gets to play for the whole set.
Like Barack said, there was never a scandal through my entire electoral process. This is one thing. Let me interject this quick so we get back to our business. This is something that bothers me. Here is Barack, and he comes from Chicago, becomes the president, does everything that he does, and even after he left the presidency, he has never gone back to Chicago as a street organizer or as an organizer. He's never gone back to Chicago to try to bring some kind of sanity and to take the power of him as the president and the ex-president and keep him from shooting children in the head. And he never talks about it, and he never comes forward with a discussion about it. And I'd like to someday ask him why.
I just adjusted the little ball here. If you see my hand, that's what I'm doing. Like, it would look better if I did it that way. This is live. We're always... we had Dr. Glenn Ryan here, and
what a joy!
And he started adjusting the crystals during the shoot. It was so funny.
He has a little David in him too.
And it's like everything is neatly aligned now, and I didn't want it that way because you get different reflections based on tilting it funny, and it's just funny because now it's all. I'm so anal, I can't help it.
No, nobody notices that, David.
Apparently not. So, look, we're talking about stuff that is very central to our future, to our security, to our safety, and you have to understand something, okay? KH, the vice president who could become president, okay? KH, I feel very sorry for her if she gets into this position where she is inaugurated because I honestly can tell you this. The way they get the performance out of you if you're running is they don't let you know what's really going on until you've already done the job, and thinking that you're going to be this hero and thinking that you're going to do good for this country and thinking that you're going to make any decisions on your own or that you have any ability to say anything other than what they want you to say. That is not the case, folks. True. And when Barry had it, okay, as I said in previous videos, this is the infamous now David was crying for 5 minutes. The reason why I was crying is because of the threats they made to Barry's wife and children, what I knew about those threats, how disgusting and horrific they are, and the fact that you don't die very fast. Okay, and when you really start to learn about this stuff, how difficult would it be for a psychopathic group like Dr. Pete Peterson once told me to take the aides of certain congressmen, to abduct them in the middle of the night from their homes, throw them in the back of a van with duct tape over their mouths and blindfolds over their eyes, to drive them to an undisclosed location where they're then running a chipper shredder machine, a log shredding machine. And they say, you guys ratted us out, and you're either gonna put yourself in this machine or we're gonna put you in. And apparently nobody was able to go into the machine. They were actually shoved into the machine. What came out the other side is just spray. Okay? This actually happened. Other people watched this while they were crying. They go back to their jobs, and these were congressmen that were abducted from their houses, thrown into the back of vans, taken a very hard drive where you're getting banged around, you get head injuries, you get body injuries, okay? How difficult would it be to do this to 7 people on the Supreme Court? How difficult would that be? Do you think these people really think there's no case? Or were they compromised? And how difficult? I mean, Dannion,
20 states. You have 20 states standing up and saying, hey, please take a look at this.
That's right.
Okay? That is utter betrayal. No matter how much you're compromised, and we already know several are compromised, but no matter how much you're compromised, you have two viewpoints. Number one, to see who your enemies really are. To see what their opinions are and how they structure it.
Yeah!
Okay? All right? Number two, you have completely lost your identity in what matters to half of the United States of America. That shows how deep this flows. And the idea of throwing someone in a shredder and saying that your grandchildren are next, I have no problems with believing that. When I see a guy jump out of a pickup truck that's been sitting and waiting back then for her to come get in her car,
That's right.
and then empty a Glock into her car, then chase her and then come back, I don't have any problems about whether they're going to they could do that. And like you said, David, they don't care. They don't care.
Imagine what that scene would be like. Imagine what that would be like with people standing there crying, being told what they did. Oh, you think you got a real big effing mouth, don't you? You got a real big effing mouth. Well, how effing strong do you think you are now? How effing tough do you think you are now? You think that was a good idea? They start razzing you, and they have fun. They joke around as they're killing people in these horrible methods, right? So people are being shoved in head first, and it's insanity, okay? So you have to understand what we're going to be learning, folks, is really, really sick and really, really disturbing. And so as soon as I heard about the Supreme Court, I said, how difficult is it to grab 9 people? How difficult is it to say something, even a phone call? It doesn't even have to be something as gross as what I said.
Or to grab their closest relative.
Exactly. You are not going to vote on this except the way we tell you to. Mm-hmm. And even the 2 dissenters didn't actually say that they wanted to hear the case. They just said, well, we'd like to evaluate it, but we're not gonna say that it's true. Right? So wait a minute. This is like the most unprecedented national emergency we've ever had. It's crazy. It's a cyber Pearl Harbor. We've already been invaded. It was done with electronics.
It's bewildering.
And now the only option that we may have could be to declare insurrection. There literally might be no other way to do this. And so everybody gets really scared about this stuff. The F-16 being down, the idea that 50,000 people were taken out with a bunker buster, that's totally plausible to me, folks.
Or they get prepared, David. What we're trying to bring forth is this. Hey, everybody, we've looked at this every which way. We've watched it from prophecy predictions to reality and research and insider information.
How much money would it cost, Dannion, to get those war materials in position?
Billions.
That's right.
Billions. And to put
the fuel
entire
and the
carrier
personnel.
fleets, put carrier fleets off the coast. I mean, whatever it is gigantic in proportion. And thanks to your research and thanks to the conversations of what we're putting forward, people get a chance to prepare, not to be afraid. Nobody dies. But fear and stress is a control mechanism, and we're watching it being played out.
That's absolutely right. So, again, one of the things that the Alliance is the most concerned about is the idea that something devastating could happen, and we have a loss of life that's very significant before they're able to do anything like saving the country. So everybody is very, very concerned. Now, I'm not telling you to panic at your discretion, because what I've said so many times is, again, benevolent ETs have stopped dozens of nuclear attacks, dozens of wars. They do it over and over and over and over, and it's a very consistent problem, quote unquote, for the military-industrial complex, okay? So we have been told for so long that you're going to get mass arrests and disclosure, that you're going to get the bad guys arrested, you're going to find out how evil they were, you're going to find out what they were hiding, and as Dr. Pete Peterson once said, I really don't think UFO disclosure is going to wait very long once we find out who these people are and what they were doing.
And how many of them there is.
That's right.
I mean, when you want to come into office, like what Trump said, he wanted to come in office, he wanted to expose them all. And then when he found out it was everybody, you have the tendency to be smart. And this is the early days of his campaign.
Oh, Dannion, I didn't even have a slide on this. The whole thing that you can go look up for yourself, the DOD has cut all of the counterterrorism financing for the C-you-know-what, 3 letters. All of that funding has been cut. That in and of itself. How did Japan get into World War II? Why did they attack Pearl Harbor? Because we gave them oil sanctions and they couldn't buy oil anymore. They got their money cut off, right? And their fuel.
But you remember, these are assassination teams. These are high-speed advanced interaction teams.
Right.
What you're going to fund is your ability to hunt terrorists.
Right.
Okay, so
if all of that money has been cut off at the same time that we're seeing this massive buildup,
and boots on the ground, that means you're describing who your enemy is.
this is very
And
intense.
Well, and it's pretty terrifying, but the point that we have to come to truly realize, everybody, is this is where we are. And where we are is knowledge is power. And knowing this and being able to observe it from the platform that David and I are trying to bring it forward and trying to add a little sense of humor to it, only gives you the ability to see clearly. Is to see very, very clearly about how great a times we live in to defend our human self, our American self, and the freedoms that come with the identity of our spiritual self. And we're here trying to do that.
That's the Dannion patois. It's just this kind of beat poetry of words that gets thrown together really fast, and it doesn't make any sense, but it sounds great.
Unless you're really listening from your heart.
That's true. I'm too busy trying to look good for you, Uncle Mama.
Well, you're doing a pretty fair job.
I think we've got a good thing here, but I don't want to lose track of the final part and our time requirements, which are very slim. Okay, so let's go to the final thing, because what have I always been telling you? Mass arrest disclosure, mass arrest disclosure. You're going to get both of them, right? And everybody wants to laugh and say, oh, you're a ufologist, huh? So you're a believer. I had a person I was working with, so you're a believer? I said, no, I research truthful information. I only look at things that I can prove quantifiably. If you want to call that belief, it's belief with evidence. It's belief with scientifically verifiable proof.
And I can support that 100% from being around you.
So before we get into this last thing, I again want to point out that there are benevolent ETs out there, and when you really start to do this research, there's plenty of evidence for them. It's very, very extensive, and they are not going to let the planet go down the tubes. So I think, in fact, I've had many dreams saying to the Alliance, these beings were talking to me and telling me to tell this to the Alliance, multiple dreams, that once we step up as a planet, as a nation, to defend our freedom, to defend our rights, the beings will have our back, because we have decided on a collective level that that's what we want, okay? So all of us, the beings are existing in a realm, and when I say the beings, I'm talking about higher density, higher dimensional angelic beings, okay? They're living in a world in which there is a perception of absolute truth, which means that even if every person on Earth was deceived, they know exactly what's going on, they know exactly who's really at fault, and they perceive absolute truth. Therefore, the only way that the deception that we're seeing right now playing out, with the possibility of a UN-led invasion of this country, oh yeah, let's get him out of the White House. Let's just, whatever it takes, we got to get this done. We got to get him out of there. Okay, this is insanity. But the higher beings do understand absolute truth. They do understand what's really going on here. And so even if everybody is deceived, they will make sure that we are not led astray. And so therefore, the only way that this attempted coup would work is if enough of us actually voted for it, we authorized it. Now, how would we do that? If enough of Americans said, you know what, yeah, it's dirty, yeah, I don't like it, yeah, it's going to break the process forever, it's never going to happen again, we're never going to be able to vote again, but whatever, I just want this guy out of here. Go ahead and let the DS run everything from now on. I'm fine with that. If enough people said that, the beings would be obligated to let this play out.
Because this is a free will zone.
It's our free will. But the fact that we collectively have obviously decided we didn't want this, there was a landslide of real voting going on, not the fake stuff, but the landslide was there. 74 million, 11 million more than the previous election. That never frickin' happens. Massive, massive turnouts, okay? That voting, that shows, okay, even if you hate the guy, right, you have to also reconcile that the majority of Americans who actually did do this wanted this. And you got to give them their 4 years, because that's what voting is. It's what the people want. And even if you didn't win what you wanted, you got to go with what the people say. That's what elections are supposed to be.
And that's a normal conversation until you see the amount of outrageous fraud
That's
perpetrated on us.
So my point is that Yes, we're getting really close to that. Yep. Thank you. We're going to do the meditation here momentarily. We're not going to run too far over. I've always said that the benevolent ETs, this goes back to the law of one, sources that I've studied and considered deeply. The reason why they block these attacks, why these incendiary devices, the reason why they're stopping this from happening is that they're protecting us so that we go through this mass awakening without being destroyed. So the DS is allowed to exist, but they're not allowed to destroy massive, massive numbers of lives. And I expect that will continue. I've had multiple dreams that told me that as soon as we really start to step up as a nation, as a planet, to defend our rights, the ETs are now authorized by the laws of the universe to come in and intervene in a much more direct capacity. But it's not the right time just yet, and that is what has leaked. So let's go back to the slides. This is so amazing, okay? This is true, folks. An Israeli space official says ETs are already here. It even made it into TMZ of all things. TMZ, you can see that at the top. Ex-Israeli space official, aliens and Galactic Federation are real, and they are hiding until we are ready. I'm going to be reading from this. This is the Middle East Eye online newspaper. We'll just use extraterrestrials because they're humans. They don't even look any different than us a lot of times. Human ETs exist, and Trump knows it, according to the former head of the Israeli space program. I'm going to read quotes from this momentarily. Here's another one. Former head of Israel's space division, ETs are real, and President T was on the verge of confirming. So now I'm going to read you from MiddleEastEye.net. These are, I checked these websites. They are real. They're not fake websites. Obviously, TMZ is real, so this is not fake, folks.
Well,
okay?
kind of.
It's kind of
They're
real.
kind of real.
Let's hope they never turn their look to us, God.
Let's hope so.
The former head of Israel's space program, notice the British spelling, has claimed that the U.S. and Israeli governments are in touch with ETs and that a Galactic Federation is already in existence. Haim Eshed, who ran the Israeli space program for nearly 30 years. This is like a very high-level guy, folks.
And a general.
Yeah, he said humanity isn't ready to make contact with the ETs just yet, and he claims that this civilization had to intervene to prevent our president from blurting out their secrets before the right time. The 87-year-old made the comments to the Israeli newspaper, I'm going to butcher this, Yediot Aharonot, ahead of the publication of a new book entitled The Universe Beyond the Horizon, which deals with his claims about the existence of ET intelligence. Buy that today. Buy that book today, and I am not getting a commission. The ETs have asked not to announce that they are here because humanity is not ready yet, he told this Israeli newspaper. They have been waiting for humanity to evolve and reach a stage where we will generally understand what space and spaceships really are. It's kind of an awkwardly worded sentence, but we're just not grown up enough yet, is the bottom line.
Are we in too much turmoil to have to deal with
Exactly.
this from a religious, political, and economic standpoint?
Just the stress that it would put on everybody before we get the arrests, I think, is really the point here. There's an agreement between the USG and the ETs. They signed a contract with us to do experiments here. Whoa! Oh, yeah. All right.
They don't need a wood chipper now.
So look, there's different treaties that are at work here, and there's one that they call Tau 9 that was done with Eisenhower. This apparently was with a more negative group. In Awakening in the Dream, I do talk about the idea that there's compelling evidence of benevolent ETs and negative ETs, both sides, using humans that they've grown in the embryonic state into adulthood in the fetal shape, which is what a gray is. The grays are neonates. If the fetal proportions are maintained, the head, the eyes, that's what it looks like. So they can grow these, and then they can telepathically interface with them. So it's almost like having the ability to control a whole bunch of them at once and get these things to work at once. So I go through very contentious material in my new book and make the argument that there is a positive aspect to the abduction phenomenon that's been very systematically overlooked, in which most of these contactees, and this is before all this the C blank blank propaganda came out in the 1990s, okay? Before all that came out, there were studies that were done, I write about them in the book, in which almost everybody that had these hypnotic regressions had positive experiences, spiritual contacts with these beings, that they remembered that they had volunteered to do this before they were born, and that what they were doing with the sampling of their genetic material, that process was very important to humanity's future. In the book, I combine the work of Cosmic Voyage by Dr. Courtney Brown with the Law of One, which I read immediately thereafter, and both sources are saying that our DNA is stored so that if anything really bad happens to humanity on Earth, we can be reintroduced on this or another planet, and all of our genetic stock is there. They don't have to clone a bunch of people. They got unique DNA for everybody. That's what this is really about. That's why people get scoop marks like on the back of their knee. That's why genetic samples are taken. That's why sperm is taken, or why there's pregnancies. So this is a different view, and it's very, very controversial, and it takes a lot of time to explain, way beyond the scope of this video. But I just want to put it out there that every ET group, whether they're the good guys or the bad guys, every ET group is involved with our genetics, and they're both trying, either side is trying to steer humanity more in favor of what they desire. So the positive side is doing this, and the negative side is doing this. There's a big discussion there. Please read the book for more information. Now, this is put out without any other qualifiers. He explained that the ETs have a base on Mars.
With us involved.
With us, yes.
Then look at all those stories.
I've got to get this book, man.
But David,
as soon as it comes out, I got to read it.
But look at all those stories that you've heard from so many different people, and so many of them focusing on Mars, not the moon, not Jupiter.
That's right.
But Mars, 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 Mars.
Bases on Mars with ETs and human personnel. The first guy telling me about this was back in 2007 with Henry Deacon, that he went to work at a military base in the UK, and he portaled off to Mars. And that's where he was doing his job. And that they had gravity plates in the different rooms depending on which ET species it was. You'd have more or less gravity. He talked about these tunnels that you'd shoot through, and that the tunnels had views that made the Grand Canyon look like crap. They're like these tunnels that have clear surfaces on them, so you're in this little egg-shaped car, and you're looking out the windows. And some of those tunnels have actually appeared in some of the photos of Mars. The glass tubes of Mars. We've talked about this years ago.
And think about Elizabeth and I we're sitting in a chiropractor's office and having a conversation with a Russian and another guy, American, who's a black guy who had served in the military. And he started telling us a story about his father working at JPL Laboratories in the 60s. Right. Now watch how easy this was. And Beth and Elizabeth and I are both listening. How people beam to work. They beam to work from other planets.
That's right. So
Mars.
let me just hit this off again real quick because you said it fast. You guys met somebody at the chiropractor. I didn't happen to go that day. I wish I had. And he worked at his father worked at JPL in the 1960s. And so that father was bringing this JPL intel home, which he wasn't supposed to do. He's breaking the law and his security oath. But he told his kid about...
He had a person.
Oh, that's right.
That managed.
I wasn't there. Yeah, this is your story. So.
His father worked there, but the person that came home to dinner, his best friend, who we named and who Elizabeth and I looked up, and the guy was the head of the laboratory at JPL in 1965, and he called him by name. Elizabeth and I came back home and we looked it up, and he said they beamed to work.
ETs were beaming into JPL
beaming to work into JPL. And when I laughed, I was looking at Elizabeth. What I laughed is I could see them with their little lunch box. You know, the little lunch box that you have. And the first thing I thought was, here's this guy that's from aliens beaming into work with his little lunch box, and that would beam home. And this guy was so matter of fact because us having the conversation made him recall the event. And he said he wouldn't have believed it except listening to himself.
But didn't you guys also say, Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong here, but didn't he also say that the beings were working with our space people
We're
to...
working on technology to go to Mars, is what he told us.
Right.
Think about that when you just stop and you think about this conversation we had, and now this 87-year-old guy, which means he doesn't give a damn. He's just like the rest of us.
Right.
You had enough. You can't do anything to us. And the non-disclosure agreement that you signed is not important. And I'll bet you, if we saw his medical record, we would already know why he's coming forth with this information.
And didn't you also say, Dannion, that he originally had a very kind of skeptical, bad attitude about UFOs when he first brought it up?
Had no belief.
But then he remembered this story from his childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So in real time, he starts connecting the dots for himself.
Because Elizabeth was asking him the questions. This is a guy who serves veterans.
Right.
He's a veteran who serves veterans, and when you get to talking about veterans, I'm all over you.
Right.
And Elizabeth was asking the questions in such a way to explore why he didn't believe, and then all of a sudden, he gave the name, who ran the JPL laboratory, who was the big boss, who was the head of the lab at that same time. But this is the last thing that he said. He went to a party and they were a little drunk. He was like 15. Went to a party, they were a little drunk, and the two guys were talking, and he walked up on them, and he said that these group that they work with had said periodically throughout history they had sent one of their own kind as a Messiah type figure.
That's right.
Okay? And I looked at Elizabeth. Elizabeth looked at me.
No way!
No way, okay? But I could, when it comes like that, like when we were talking about the fraud in the voting, when it's just an everyday American.
Right.
It's not somebody who's tailored. It's not an announcer. It's not a journalist. It's just an everyday American who sees the absolute total fraud, who signs an affidavit. This guy broke his own rules about his skepticism to talk to us about something that happened to him as a child. And it's the same way that while we're trying to get this information across to everybody, this is the kind of stuff that makes sure you have to be prepared.
And he didn't want to go on camera
No.
with it at all.
Because he thought what people would think about him based on his service to the community would be affected.
Look at what's happened to every whistleblower I've brought out. They get horribly attacked, and it causes all kinds of problems in their lives. They get horribly, 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 horribly attacked. Like a savagery that no person deserves, no matter what you've done. No matter what you've done. The savagery that you have to go through to be a public figure now on the internet is unbelievable.
I just can't wait for that savagery to be focused on me, David. Oh, God, I didn't know hanging out with you with the Dave and Dan Comedy Hour would bring savagery. This is exciting, everybody. What are you going to do, kill me? Well, that's all funny.
You, Dannion.
That's all funny.
All right, let's go back to the slide now because we're almost done, and I
We
wanted
have
to
to
get
get
through
that
everything.
meditation in.
Yep. So he explained that the ETs have a base on Mars, which I've been saying to you folks since 2007, thanks to Henry. T was on the verge of revealing the ET's existence, but the ETs in the Galactic Federation are saying, wait, let people calm down first. Now, there's whoops, we'll get to that in a second. That's your quote you want me to read. So back to here. Back to the camera. Yeah, thank you. We'll get this all sorted out. So let's just make sure I got that all done. Okay, so it's a very important point here that we don't know what ETs he's talking about, and we don't know whether they're really the good guys or the bad guys, okay? And I am going to say that because certain ET groups, and apparently these are the human-looking ones. Some of the other stuff you can read about what this guy's saying. There's a human-looking group, okay? There's different types, and some of them have a negative agenda and some of them don't. So there are some groups that might not want disclosure to happen because it interrupts their agenda. So we cannot assume that this is the good guys. Even though everything sounds right, oh, Galactic Federation, oh, they're not ready yet. Maybe this group is telling the president, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, and maybe the group that wants him to do it can't speak to him by universal law. That's possible.
I would agree.
But regardless of which side this is that's saying this or anything, it's another one of these massive disclosures, because we're talking about joint ET human bases. We're talking about joint ET human bases on Mars, which we've been talking about since 2007. We're talking about the idea that there are certain cycles of human evolution that need to play out. We need to get these guys dealt with first. We need to get the DS arrested. We need to learn the truth. That is our awakening.
And it may also expose one of those terrestrial existences that's working against us with them.
Well,
Wait
yeah,
till it calms
absolutely.
down,
The negative
because
ETs, absolutely.
It will expose them if the DS has, I've never believed this kind of stuff, David, but there's just too much information that's out there that makes you really think it through.
That's right.
And how exciting it is.
So think about this. Disclosure is a certainty, but the higher beings who see how this is going to affect the whole planet and how it ties in with what I call ascension, we're going through that ascension process right now. We are in the Great Awakening.
I agree.
Don't wait for it to happen and think that you got to wait. It's now. The choices you're making right now determine how you're going to ascend, where you're going to go, what level you're going to get to. Okay? There's something much, much bigger here going on than the election, the DS, whether they get arrested. That's all actually really minor. But it's a necessary element of a global awakening, because what these ETs always say, and the Russian science backs it up, is that when enough of us see through the lies, the laws of physics themselves will change.
Takes 3%.
When enough people see through the lies, the laws of physics themselves will change. This could include people becoming more psychic, telepathic, maybe even levitation, because your laws of physics on your planet will be tailored to the free will of your people. As your people's free will changes, the law changes, and now they don't have to worry about the prime directive anymore. The ETs can show up.
And that's what they're trying to stop, David. If we know these
The deep
cycles
state's
exist,
they're trying to stop
we know these cycles exist, and they have tens of thousands of years of history.
Yep.
And people know that this cycle is here, this change, this shift in consciousness is here, then they would be working as hard as they can using that cycle to control and manipulate our free will, which is our divine connection.
Yep.
And this is what they're after. When you get to the bottom line of it, people need to dig deep down into their spiritual self, not their petty political or personal. They need to structure their divinity to make the right decisions for themselves and people that they love.
Yes.
He has to listen to that 100 times a day. And I'm sorry.
All right.
Elizabeth has to listen to it also. And now you're going to have to listen to it.
So, last thing here, you wanted me to throw this in. You probably can't read this, but I can. It's a quote from Benjamin Rush you asked me to add, and I'll just read it. Unless we put medical freedom into the Constitution, the time will come when medicine will organize itself into an undercover dictatorship. That's just like the military-industrial complex. To restrict the art of healing to doctors and deny equal privileges to others will constitute the Bastille of medical science. All such laws are un-American and despotic.
And that is where we are today. And Dr. Benjamin Rush is a war hero, a brilliant scientist, and a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He saw this coming, and why I was so harping on homeopathic remedies. Remember, everybody, homeopathic remedies represent such a global awakening in the ability to heal that we don't recognize yet. But in conversations that I heard between Elizabeth and David and Glenn, there is no question that they have to stop this form of medicine, and they are creating us through these, And Benjamin Rush's prophecy has brought us to where the battle for the souls of humankind is in front of us.
Well, and I also interviewed Dr. Glenn Ryan, who, by the way, in case you don't know this, Dr. Glenn Ryan actually was able to show human consciousness affecting the DNA molecule itself. Other scientists have proven that there's a healing effect. Dr. Glenn Ryan is unique in showing both the winding and unwinding of DNA and its electrical conductivity can be directly affected by human consciousness, and you can rule out all other contributing factors. Our consciousness does heal, and it actually affects the DNA molecule directly. And in that conversation we were having, that I was having with Dr. Ryan, we talked about Jacques Benaviste. And this is a French scientist who shined, I guess it was an electromagnetic field.
Listen to this. Hey,
this is
everybody.
so crazy.
Hey, everybody, please listen
tune
to
out.
what you're about to hear.
It's so weird.
Please listen to this.
Jacques Benaviste shined an electromagnetic beam through interleukin-1, which is a basic amino acid in the body that fights, it fights infections, right? He shined it through this substance into water. The water then actually had chemically detectable interleukin-1 in it, the molecules themselves.
In the light.
Even though it was hermetically sealed and there's no possible way that it could have gotten in there except through this electromagnetic wave, which, how could an electromagnetic wave do that? So when Dr. Luc Montagnier followed up on Jacques Benaviste's work, he said, interleukin-1 isn't that complex. What's the single most complex molecule that we could project into water? Well, that would be DNA. Dr. Luc Montagnier proved it over and over again that you zap DNA with electromagnetism, and then you have this other solution, which I guess has a little bit of nucleotides in it, which are very, very simple amino acids that would exist everywhere in nature. They're always going to be around, okay? So don't think that that's anything special. Planets have nucleotides everywhere. They're everywhere. The important part is that when he shined this DNA beam into the water, the nucleotides arranged like a jigsaw puzzle into this hypercomplex DNA molecule that was testable. And it's been repeated over and over again. It is not in dispute.
Think about how utterly amazing that is, that the divine will take encoding in energetic patterns like homeopathy.
That's right.
And create life. No matter how crazy it's getting, everybody, remember what you're listening to David describe and what Glenn did so eloquently is that the divine will find a way to keep creating life and to keep generating the nature of who we are as divine beings. And when you start to listen to the science of what David is describing, you almost have to commit to the energetic nature of who we spiritually are as opposed to who we physically and humanly are.
Because it's all in how you structure it.
Exactly.
All right. Well, with that said, we've given you a lot to think about, and I don't want to go more than 3 hours. I think we can keep it to 10 minutes. I want to do this meditation because guess what, folks? What we're heading into here is scary as all hell. We might not be able to move around for up to 4 to 6 months. That's kind of like a worst-case scenario. I will say some of the briefings we've gotten is that most of the work that the Alliance needs to do is going to be fast. It might only take a few days. They were originally estimating about 3 days. We heard that earlier. The whole thing about internet won't work, email won't work, phone won't work, that's probably still going to happen. That was the infamous 3 days of darkness thing. Everybody, oh, David was wrong. I wasn't wrong. It just wasn't right on the timing.
But last week they tested the emergency broadcasting system.
That's right. So probably what's going to happen, folks, is you're going to hear something on your phone that's going to give you instructions. It'll be an emergency message on your phone. It'll make that horrible noise. You're not going to be having internet. You're not going to be on the phone. And a lot of stuff's going to be happening during this time. And I am also sad to say that the general did tell me that there will be a significant loss of friendlies in order for us to restore freedom. It's going to have to happen that way. It's not going to be without casualties. It's very, very sad. So we have the power. We have almost 15,000 souls right now, individual humans, listening to this live. The mass consciousness meditation effect only requires 7,000. So we have more than double that amount. And a lot of the people that were in these studies, in case you forgot about this, 7,000 people got together to meditate. They didn't know if it was going to work. They create a state called pure consciousness in their mind. And then there was a 72% reduction in crime, war, terrorism, fatalities, and a corresponding increase in things like health and the economy.
That's what we're doing here.
So
Okay?
we have double the number we need.
And listen, everybody, we also want, no matter what, when you listen to this program, wherever you are, listen to this meditation as though you're a part of this 15,000 people and add your power to it. We are going to make the difference from this level of consciousness equal to the war level of consciousness, which we're trying to avoid.
Right, and Dannion is not religious. I'm not religious. This is strictly a consciousness exercise. We're not bringing in any particular god or goddess or anything. We're just going to get you into the state where you have closer access to this universal consciousness. And also remember that this effect is not constrained by time. We can structure the future in a global meditation that we do now.
Whenever you watch this.
So with that being said...
But we do have one goddess here. That's Elizabeth.
All right. So without further ado, I'd like us to get started. And again, this is non-denominational. Please just, even if you don't think this is going to work, I ask you to do this with me now. Just give it a shot.
Please.
I'd like you to close your eyes. And by the way, sweetheart, if you want to use the joystick camera while I'm doing this and pan around the room, that'd be fun. That's number 6, I believe. The joystick does work. I'd like you to close both of your eyes. Put both feet flat on the floor. Breathe in. Take a nice deep breath. Just let it go. And then I'd like you once again to breathe in through the nose, if you can. And just let it go out through the mouth. And as you keep breathing, I ask that you simply allow yourself to relax. Allow relaxation to take place. Let it happen. Let yourself just become so relaxed. All the tension in any area of your body. Notice where you might be feeling tension. Perhaps you feel it in your butt from the chair. Perhaps it's in your neck. Perhaps it's in your shoulders. Just ease that tension out. Let it go. Just relax it out. Breathing more deeply, more melting, tingling light, melting out all the tension in your body, going deeper and deeper into pure relaxation, pure consciousness. Even if you don't think it's going to do anything or if it's going to matter, just let yourself go deep into relaxation, deep into a truly warm, bubbly, calming, relaxing place. What if there are benevolent beings that are overseeing this entire process, such that even when it appears the most dire, when it appears that World War III could ignite at the drop of a hat, even then we are guided, we are guarded, we are protected by very, very ancient human beings, far older than we are in our modern form, who've seen this on many other worlds and have ushered many civilizations through this transition, diligently holding back the disasters so that the negative can be exposed, so that we can truly understand who we are, why we are here, and where we are going. At this time, in a state of deep relaxation, we affirm the results of our voting. We affirm the voices of 74 million. We affirm the right of this country and of the world itself to be governed for the people, by the people, through a fair electoral process, through a process that cannot be confused, that cannot be obfuscated, that cannot be subject to legerdemain, skullduggery, cloak and dagger, nighttime manipulation after everybody's asleep. Just dial in what you need. We reject this. We reject this. We hereby affirm and state our freedom. We claim it. We demand it. And we humbly beseech these higher benevolent angelic forces to intervene upon our behalf. Not for a president, not for an administration, but for the people, for we, the people of planet Earth. We deserve to have our voices heard. We deserve to have who we want in office. We deserve for this process to be fair and transparent. We deserve for this process to be auditable. And we deserve to have the authentic results of the legal votes actually counted and considered. We ask and we humbly request that you, all of you in the higher realms, protect us now in our hour of greatest darkness and highest need, that you make good on your prophecies from so many ancient religions, that we would get through this safely and intact, that we would have the revealing of the negative, that we would have the unfolding of true awareness, that truth is no longer sequestered and denied, it is liberated and set free, that we can speak without fear of censorship, that we can vote without fear of suppression, that we can serve our country in whatever way we choose without worrying that we are secretly advocating for some genocidal cabal of elites. We hereby demand that we have our planet taken back, that we have the right to govern ourselves, that we have the right to make the decisions and the steps, the strategies that are implemented at this time to ensure that we will get freedom, that we will get disclosure, that we will get forbidden technologies that can totally save our world and have been held from us only for the most meretricious, asinine, and completely insane reasons. We attract the technologies that will eliminate disease. We affirm the power of anti-gravity. We affirm the reality of clean energy. We know that you in the higher realms already have this, that you have given it to us and that it has been withheld from us, even though you intended for it to be used by all. We claim our freedom, we claim our power, and we surround in the greatest possible love and support and prayer imaginable all those who serve their country. For where we go one, we go all. Amen. Well, that's 454.
That was great.
I did it.
No, and listen, everybody. Thank you so much as this holiday season comes into play. Thank you so much for giving us this time in your life. And stay focused. And as this all unfolds, remember, we chose to be here now at this time to make the kind of difference that we're capable of making. And I really appreciate what David's meditation was about, that we affirm our freedom, our power, and our spiritual nature of ourselves to create our own manifest destiny. And if we don't, unless something big and crazy happens, we probably won't see you again till next year as the Dave and Dan Comedy Hour. But in the next year, you will see us many times with our co-captain goddess Elizabeth, and we look forward to it. I love each and every one of you, and I appreciate you for giving us your time today.
Elizabeth, you want to say anything? You have to speak loudly, but they will hear you.
Well, thank you everybody for being here, and keep the good faith and good vision. they could hear that.
Oh, yeah.
They can hear it.
And I want to thank you for watching. You know, Danny and I love to joke around with each other, so if we bust each other's chops, it doesn't mean there's any negativity going on. It's just the way we are all the time, actually. And so we sat down together and made that really hilarious opening sequence. And so
Should we end with that?
if you want to end with
So
that,
please enjoy the love and the laughter in this holiday season. And unless there's a crisis, we'll see you in the new year. Love you, everybody.
hopefully a lot freer at that, too.
I've
Click
got a
the button.
big at home and a pin, corn to feed him on. All I need's a pretty little girl to feed him when I'm gone.
No, I got a hot tea. Love yourself. Love yourself. Love yourself. Love yourself.
I've got a big at home and a pin, corn to feed him on. All I need's a pretty little girl.
So
to
how
feed
you
him
structure it, man. Yeah. Yes, sir. The Dave and Dan Show. Got me a pig. All I need is a little girl